I was muted.
There we go.
And where's, oh, here he comes. John Paff.
I'm back, Brian.
All right, we're still waiting for Dr. Porras to return.
All right. Sorry about that. Didn't realize my camera shutter was closed.
Right on. All right. So we are back from closed session on items number 3 and 4. We managed to deal with items number 1 and 2. We will be coming back after regular session to wrap those up. On item number 3, we discussed, no direction was given, and then item number 4, we discussed and direction was given. I think now we move on to Pledge of Allegiance. So can we get that flag up, Jonathan? John Paff, are you up for it this time? Or do you want me to do it? I'll do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to item number 4, board organization, election of board president. Dr. Porras, I believe you take it from here, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clerk. As you all know, we have a situation where we have an open position for the office of the board president, and that was announced last board meeting and brought forward for action for this meeting. So as we do not have a board president just this moment, I'm going to facilitate the vote as I've done at the organizational meeting. And so tonight we're looking for any nominations for one of our trustees to serve as president of the board. This is a 1-year period. We do not need a second on any nominations. And the first, if multiple folks are nominated, the first to receive a majority of the votes would be seated into the office. So that being said, if I may, I'm looking for any nominations for the office of board president.
I nominate John Paff.
Okay, we have a nomination for John Paff by Christy Dawson. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate John Paff.
Okay. Second nomination.
Oh, well, I'll nominate John Paff too then.
There's a mutiny happening here. Okay, looks like we have a nomination for the same person by multiple trustees. So if there are no other nominations, I'd like to call for the vote, and we'll need to do a roll call vote as we're in a video meeting. So those in favor of the election of John Paff to seat as the board president for a 1-year term, please signal by saying aye for this roll call vote.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Paff,
You get to vote for yourself.
I know. I think I abstain just on general principle, so we'll just
Okay.
Oh,
stay off the record. It's aye.
Thank you.
Fine.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Walton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the vote of confidence.
Right.
Thank you,
congratulations, Mr. President, on a 5-0 vote. That passed. And I will figuratively hand the gavel over to you.
Thank you, and I will figuratively gavel us back in. We'll talk into written communications, please. Board, I have, in my notes, I have one letter. I believe we had a second. The letter we most recently received was a parent concerning reopening schools. Brian, do you have anything else?
No, other than a follow-up one that we got later today. So those are the two that I recall.
and I believe there was one about equity in education as well.
Yes, there was. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Equity and education. That's the one I was missing. I knew we had two. Thank you.
Yeah.
Board member comments. Gabby, are you online?
We may
Yes,
not.
I am.
There.
Gabby, how about we start with what's going on at the high school?
We can't hear you.
Not much. Let's see here.
Poetry Out Loud we have coming up next week. So first for Poetry Out Loud, Mr. Hack was taking care of that again this year. So entries are closing this Friday, and then next week we're gonna have a preparation meeting on Monday to prepare everything. And then the actual event will be on Friday, January 29th at 7 p.m. And Mr. Hackwitz has a Zoom link set up already. So he has this on the flyer about Poetry Out Loud, and I believe it'll be posted on the high school website as well. So we have that for Poetry Out Loud. Next, in terms of leadership specifically, we're looking forward to our meeting on Monday, where we'll be visited by representatives of the Comstock Development Group so that we can ask questions and learn more about the hotel project that's been proposed nearby. And then third, also for leadership, is we're looking forward to visitation by a representative from one of the senior parent groups that's been helping the senior class put on some like an informal activity. So for example, we're talking about ways to design and purchase and promote class t-shirts like they usually do every year, but it's just been difficult this year not being in person and all that. But that's really all we have. I think the biggest thing school-wide is the Poetry Out Loud event. So next Friday, make sure to log on for that at 7 p.m.
And by next Friday, you mean the 29th?
Yes, 29th.
Great. Thank you. We look forward to that announcement. Ms. Swanson.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm honored to be here. I know I'm a trustee and I need to be here, but I'm honored to be here. I have a couple comments. I watched the inauguration this week and I couldn't help but think about the spirit of why public education exists and is free for all. It's to educate our citizens so that we can all become informed voters. And so I was just thinking so proud, regardless of who I voted for, it's a big day for our country. So I wanted to mention that. And let's see. On that note, just about communication, this week I had a conversation with a parent who had emailed the board and asked if I had received it. And I let her know that when folks write to the board president is the only one who will respond thoroughly to her. So she was a little confused about that. And so I let her know that, but I wanted to bring it up tonight in case other folks don't realize that. And let's see. I'm freezing, so sorry that I'm like shaky tonight. Oh, I wanted to mention, and I know we'll talk about it later, but that the board is having our study session on January 30th, which is when we will be talking about board goals. And I think this is a very exciting meeting. I know it's on a Saturday morning, but it's so important that we talk about our goals and that, you know, it's the overall meeting of how we're going to steer our district. And so I really want to make sure everyone knows that they're welcome to come and participate in that meeting. It would be wonderful. And a different topic, Monterey Peninsula Housing Coalition reached out to me to see if I would want to be a member regarding affordable housing in our area. And this is, as they describe it, a group of elected officials from across the peninsula, including school boards, who are all interested in pursuing and backing policies and projects that will help remedy affordable housing crisis in our area. I want to bring that up tonight because I believe John Walton is on a housing type of committee with the city. And so I wanted to bring it up and know that that invitation had been extended. Possibly we can discuss that at a future board meeting if we want to, how we kind of want to proceed with that. And then lastly, this is Dr. Porras's 300th Board of Education meeting, which he shared with
There's
me.
a record?
I wrote it down because in between the meetings, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put that in my board comments at the next board meeting. So, so I calculated that up. So that means he has spent the equivalent of 50 days. That's almost 2 months, 24/7 at board meetings over the lifespan of his time at our district. So I wanted to send him like 300 of something to commemorate it. And I was thinking like 300 M&Ms, but I don't think he eats sweets very often. So, thank you, Dr. Porras, for your 300th meeting.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's all.
Mr. Walton,
Nothing from me tonight.
Mr. Swanson.
I wanted to mention too the Ralph's 300th meeting and thank him for all that he brings to the district, you know, in district wide, everybody. But to thank him especially for everything that he's done for me and helping me through this. You've been a tremendous guide, and you've always got the answer, and you always see a little extra angle in something that I might ask you that I missed. And so thank you just for all that you've done. Really appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Dawson.
I just wanted to mention tonight, as a board member, the excitement of the new administration's very lofty goal of, 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days. And I think anything that moves us in the direction of more vaccinations in the arm means a return to normalcy sooner. So I'm very excited about those possibilities. And that's it.
Dr. Porras, congratulations on 300 meetings. And I don't know, are they all with PGUSD?
Yeah. Yep. They all are. Yeah, haven't missed a meeting yet.
I thought after 300, we threw you into a giant pit, or do I have it wrong? But congratulations. I guess that's an accomplishment of some sort. I have nothing else this time, so we'll move on to Superintendent Report.
Thank you, and thank you all for acknowledging that. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure and certainly an honor to be serving this long, and hopefully for many moons to come. So thank you. I got just a few items to share this evening. First off, I also had an opportunity to watch the inauguration and just for the history and I think the democracy that it shares and it shows the world. Always amazing to watch. And we had a number of our classroom teachers, probably most of them, had their students watch parts of it. I had heard of several discussions happening with students, just talking about the whole process of democracy and how it works, and a good chance to take a look at government and the way it operates. And very excited when Dr. Hagquist will lead one of our own PG High Poetry Out Loud champions to become a National Youth Poet Laureate, much like Amanda Gorman did at the inauguration, which was just amazing to watch. And I think, as Trustee Carolyn mentioned, it brought tears to my eyes to just watch how beautiful our country is, and to watch how everyone can participate and be part of it. Pretty remarkable. So anyway, that was a great thing to see. I had the opportunity of doing some classroom visits over the last week and a half or so, and lastly today with the AVID class, a couple of rounds, and just want to acknowledge and appreciate all of our folks out there in the classrooms, our teachers, our support staff, our administrators, just wonderful things going on. And I don't think anyone has missed a beat in our distance learning so far. And it's just really encouraging to watch the progress of our students, and I think the inspiration that our teachers offer. So thank you all out there for the amazing work that you do. One of the item coming up next week is the annual Association of California School Administrators Superintendent Symposium. It's all on remote this year, much like many conferences have been. And typically it's here actually in Monterey anyway. And I'll be continuing my role as the facilitator for the new superintendent's workshop, which pretty much lasts all day on Tuesday and then half day on Wednesday. Currently, we have about 80 new superintendents in the state of California signed up. So looking forward to facilitating and leading that workshop along with some amazing experts in the field that'll be sharing their wisdom with the new superintendents, and looking forward to having that conversation and be part of that. So I wanted to share that I'll be doing that as well. And last but not least, I did want to share with the board that I had an opportunity to present at Rotary this past week. I am a Rotarian as well, but they wanted to get kind of caught up on what's going on with schools, and in particular our school district. And it's a lot to encapsulate in a 15-20 minute presentation, but I think I got most of the points covered. And I just wanted to share that, as always, our Rotarians are very supportive of our schools and the amount of work and service that they've done for our staff and our students. And the Rotary president wanted me to extend just a congratulations to the school board and to all the staff for amazing work with all of our students in the community. So I did want to share that too. And that ends my report for this evening.
Thank you, Ralph. Greatly appreciated. Board and audience, if I please don't take it disrespectfully if I use your first name and not your title in any part of the meetings today or in the future. It's very hard for me on Zoom to stay quite as formal as probably is necessary, so forgive me in advance. We will move on to PGUSD staff comments on non-agenda items. If you would queue rationally, I'd appreciate it. Well, seeing none so far.
Okay, we got one.
Don Keller.
Mr. Keller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to invite the board and the greater community to our counselors' Let's Talk book group, which is occurring this Tuesday night. And Sonda Fruden will be discussing the book, The Day You Begin, from 6 to 7 p.m. So again, that's Tuesday, January 26th from 6 to 7 p.m. And the link is on the RDH update that just went out today.
Thank you very much. Did you have a COCA with the principal yesterday or Tuesday?
I did. And we had roughly about eight families join. And we had a good conversation discussing our recent parent survey and various conversations that came from that.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I would like to bring forward, excuse me, some information that was just released early this evening from Tim McCarthy, who is the league commissioner for Pacific Coast Athletic League, commonly referred to as PCAL. The PCAL Board of Managers met today and took the following action regarding PCAL sports for the remainder of the 2021 school year. Effective immediately, the formal league schedules in all sports are suspended for the remainder of the year. This was done to give all 34 league schools, their districts, and governing boards the maximum flexibility to provide their students with sports experiences when and as the current restrictions change and their local situations allow. Mr. McCarthy went on to say that the driving force behind the board's decision was to provide each school with the greatest opportunity to practice and compete as each county's status and state health rules allow. So while this does not change anything for us in the immediate, we will need to take some big steps forward. One, getting out of the current shelter in place, and then enter the other various levels of appropriate color to bring sports forward. But this, as I just stated, gives us that flexibility to do so when the time arises.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia, you are currently running groups in sports conditioning. Is that correct?
Yes, we are currently running what is referred to as season 1 sports in conditioning.
And when would season 1 end, the current time frame for that? And I realize that's not PCAL, it's CCS, right?
Yes, so those are all tied together, and there is a slight adjustment that has come forward in that season 2 sports now are also allowed to practice. So we're looking at probably a March time for season 1, but things are in flux. We hope to actually bring forward some of the season 2 sports athletes in the coming month to begin their conditioning practice.
So did I understand then that you might end up with both season 1 and season 2 athletes conditioning simultaneously?
Yes, so we'd have to create a schedule to ensure that we're not overcrowded on
So
campus.
that's good news. Good luck with that. That's good news. Thank you. Any other, Billy, Ms. Mankey?
I think she dropped. I think she lowered her hand there.
Okay, I'm on apparently time delay, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I did lower my hand, but if you can hear me, can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
it was Dr. Porras on my screen is frozen, so I wasn't sure. But I wanted to take a moment and give recognitions to 2 very important people that have been in our district for a long time. We have 2 impending retirees. One is Susan Lasada. She works at the adult school and is a classified employee. She's a clerk and has been with our district for 37 years. So I want to acknowledge her and thank her very much for her service to our community, to our school district. And then on the certificated side, we have Jane Lord, who is an EL teacher at Forest Grove Elementary School. And she will be leaving us at the end of the year after 30 years of service with our school district. And just want to acknowledge both these people and the work that they have done for us.
Nice.
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, we'll move on to individuals desiring to address the board. Public comment on any item of interest to the board not within board's jurisdiction will be heard. The board will limit comments to no more than 3 minutes for each agenda or non-agenda item. The total time for public comment on each item is 20 minutes pursuant to board policy 9323. Public comment will also be allowed on each specific action item prior to board action thereon. This meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting of the board conducted in public. Please note the Brown Act limits our ability to respond to public comment. We may choose to direct items to admin for action or place on a future agenda. With that, anyone interested in desiring to address the board? Ms. Young Cara, excuse me, sorry.
Yes, Eloisa Junquera, and I have
Junquera. Thank you.
and a PGM student. And I wanted to find out from the board if there's any guidance or any possibility of change in guidance. I've been getting a lot of families that know that I am a practicing physician with the health department and asking me, what's the deal about, they just notify us that somebody in the school was positive, but there is no information whatsoever of the date of exposure. And I think we might be crossing a very fine line between protecting confidentiality and hindering pandemic management control, because you need to know the day that somebody was exposed to determine when that person should be tested and what the test means if the person is negative at a certain date. So unless you know the date of exposure, you cannot control the situation from that point on. So I understand there's the need to preserve the identity of the person that is the positive person, but at the same time, I truly believe that that's hindering adequate control.
Thank you for your comment. Dr. Porras, when you discuss COVID later on, perhaps you can consider something along those things.
Okay.
Thank you. I see no other hands at this time, so we will move along. Consent agenda. Items on consent are considered to be routine and/or may have been discussed at a prior board meeting. There's no discussions of the items prior to board vote unless a member of the board requests specific items be discussed and/or removed from consent agenda. Each item on the consent agenda approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adapted as recommended. Board, is there any questions on the consent? Any items you'd like to discuss further and we should pull, or short questions therein? Christy?
I just had a question on F, the school accountability report card.
Okay. Did you want to pull that, or is this a short question?
I had heard somebody else wanted to pull it. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Well, I certainly have considered pulling it. Ms. Swanson, are you thinking of pulling that? You'd like that pulled?
Yes, I'd like to pull it.
Okay, so that's going to make this easy. Anything else, Christy?
No.
Ms. Swanson, you'd like to pull F?
I'd like to pull F, and then I need to recuse myself I.
Ms. Swanson, well, for you to recuse yourself, we have to pull item I. Unless you have direct financial gain in that, you probably don't need to recuse yourself. It's a $1,200 contract or something similar. So it's up to you. Would you like to pull I then?
Mr. President, if I may.
Dr. Porras, go ahead.
If actually, you can still keep it within the consent agenda. We have to just make a notation on the vote that a trustee had abstained from or from a particular item. We can make that notation, or if you want to pull the item and vote separately, you can do that.
Well, I think I'll pull the item and vote separately immediately following.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Walton?
I had a question about I, but it was short. Since you pulled it, I don't have to ask.
Okay, we'll do it that time. Mr. Swanson?
Nothing to pull.
Okay, I agree that we're going to pull items F and I. Board, any public comment on this before we move forward? Okay, seeing no one.
And check with Gabby.
Yeah, I'll check with Gabby. Yeah, thank you. Generally speaking, Brian and or Jonathan or someone else, if you see someone waving a hand, you would need to notify me because I do not have a screen large enough for me to see very many people. So please let me know. Student rep, any questions on the consent?
No, I have no questions at this time.
Very good. Do I have a motion to accept consent except for items F and I?
Also move.
Seconded.
Okay, motion was made by Brian Swanson, seconded by Christy Dawson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Pap,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Andy, thank you very much. We will talk. I'd like to go immediately, board, into items and put them before item action discussion A, please. So I'd like to go ahead and start with the contract for services with Pacific West Water. Mr. Walton, you had a question on that?
Question or comment, I guess, for Ralph or Lito. The memo says the contractor will do the work in the memo, but then when I look at when the contract was signed in the invoice, it appears this is a retroactive contract. So I'd just like some clarification if this is retroactive or future work.
I'll have to ask Principal Garcia to speak to that. So I'll need to call him up. Hang on a second here. Okay. There you go.
The work has not taken place.
So am I reading the date on the invoice wrong, or why is this invoice dated November?
That's, I believe, when the original quote may have been given. and an invoice issued at that time. They're actually scheduled to come next week.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Very good. Any public comment on consent I, contract for services with Pacific West Water Purification? Seeing none. Gabby, any comment?
No, no comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Board, do I have a motion to accept contract for service with Pacific West?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Christy Dawson, seconded by Brian Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Abstain.
Thank you. Trustee Walton,
Passes 4 with 1 abstention, 4-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you all very much. We'll move back to consent F, which is the school accountability report cards. Board, I had many questions, most of which are not particularly large. There are some numbers in there which don't make a lot of sense. And when questioned, Director Silva came back and said, you know, we get these numbers direct from the state. We realize they're half a year out of date, and we'll update it when we have the opportunity. Some calculations which don't seem to work perfectly. For example, if you look at the, when we have somebody who is asked not to show up for school, detention and suspension rates on 3 schools out of 4, one was 0.024, one was 0.067, one was 0.042, and one was 1.0. I assume that's an error, and when asked, I believe Ani tried to make a correction on that as well. The real thing I would bring out on this is if you look at the student scores, and these are scores on the CASP from 2018-19. If you look particularly at our, and I'll give them in order each time, our ELA math and science scores, PG middle school is 82, 83, and 62. So we're very high for English, and language arts and math is also pretty much rock solid. Science is good. Robert Downs, 79, 75, 67. And then you go to Forest Grove and you see a discrepancy and a large change. And I pointed this out in the past, but it does say that in terms of an equity consideration, we should be reviewing this at some point. And with that, I move on to anybody else who might have questions on this. It seems like Ms. Dawson and Ms. Swanson had some. We'll start with Ms. Dawson.
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate that the timing was changed. I know a year ago I had issues because it was talking about what they were going to do in the future, and now it's more retrospective. I know I brought this up a year ago. It has not been addressed, so I feel a need to bring it up. It's supposed to be relatively recently, and the middle school is talking about what they did in 2009 as far as facility conditioned and planned improvements. It hasn't been worked on, and I want it worked on, please. I know I asked a year ago, and it's the exact same copy as a year ago. So please, I mean, I know you guys have built that fence out front, the garden area. There's a lot of nice work that's going on, and it'd be nice to kind of bring focus. I know the new gate and fences talked about. I don't think we have to go back to 09. So I'd love that. The other thing to look at, and I don't know when and how, it looks like the numbers that I'm seeing in the middle school, there are 5 new teachers, and in the high school, there are 6 new teachers over the last year or two. And with our numbers going down within the district, it certainly seems like something we need to look at as we move forward. Those are the things I want to bring up. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one more, Mr. Garcia. Numbers of graduates. I know we talked about this a little bit last year. If a student leaves your school and is enrolled over into the continuation, they are not considered a dropout. Is that correct if they're enrolled in another program?
That's correct. Hang on a second. I need to unmute him.
He's still muted. There he goes.
Okay.
That is correct. As long as a student who leaves Pacific Grove High School enrolls in another school, regardless of the location of that school, they are not considered a dropout.
So 92% seems like there would be more graduates coming. I'm wondering 8% of that population, that's a lot of kids. Where are they going, those kids?
Well, I can't speak to that because I was not here last year.
Oh, okay. It'd be great to look. I know it was close to that a year ago. It'd just be nice to know. I know, I mean, in other districts, I know in my past district, we literally, it would almost drive them over to the continuation, make sure they were enrolled, because with such a small number graduating, they shouldn't be falling through the cracks anywhere. It's a very small district, and I just love that to be looked at this year and kind of monitored, because I would see it as a higher number of graduates personally. So I was a little surprised.
I can speak, to this current school year of the students we have enrolled at Community High. We are very diligent about ensuring that process runs smoothly. And we have, and I'll use these words, we have not lost anyone. And we've moved them over so that they can pick up almost, well, actually immediately. We make the decision on one day, and the next day they're enrolled at Community High School.
And just for my education, my memory is if they are at Community High School, they did drop out, they're not your dropout at that point.
No, a dropout is considered a student who is not enrolled in any school. So a student who essentially transfers from Pacific Grove High School to Community High School is not a dropout. If we had a student leave, and let's just say they moved out of Pacific Grove, and we did not receive any information about them enrolling in a new school, public or private, that student would be considered a dropout.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I'm
Right.
just saying we're so small, it should be great to chase that. I think that's a wonderful percentage that could be pushed up without a lot of effort. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Tracked doggedly. Thank you.
I agree.
Ms. Dawson, thank you very much. Ms. Swanson.
Thank you, President F. About the school report cards, I have two main questions. My first one is I was wondering if Ani could highlight any information that's changed from previous years. I know that the document itself lends some of its columns to kind of a little bit of comparison, but it's not in all of the data. So I was number one, wondering if Ani could highlight that information. And my second question, there's no mention of our special ed preschool as a site or our state preschool as a site. I know that the state preschool is kind of in its own category sometimes, but I wanted to bring up that we do have a special ed preschool at the David Avenue location, and right next door we have a state preschool. And I was just curious if you could educate me on how we can have some accountability for those sites. Maybe it's not through these report cards, I don't know. So if you could educate me a little bit on how these report cards get decided, which sites you do them at.
Thank you very much. Ani, thank you, Ms. Swanson. Before you answer, I want to clarify for the public. If you look at this report, and you'll note that there are no percentages for 2019-20 in certain areas, it is not because we are lagging in our data, it's because that data will not exist. And I'm looking at, say, the CASP on science, simply because those tests weren't taken last year at all. So there will be a gap year until they fall off this map. With that, Ani, are you available to answer?
Yes. Trustee Carolyn, correct? That's how you prefer? Trustee
Yes.
Carolyn? Yes, okay. So Reed, let me answer the question about the preschools. The SARCs, State Accountability Report Card Systems, don't include preschools or preschool like our state schools. It's not part of the requirement that the state asks of districts to gather this information. A lot of the information that is populated on our SARC comes from data that we submit to the CDE, California Department of Education, and that information then gets populated back into our SARC. So there is no requirement to create a SARC for the state preschools, because the information is not, we can the information across all of our school sites, and we don't even have one for the adult school. We could also include them. But the information is for our elementary schools, middle school, high school, and our continuation, our community high school. So that there is just not a state requirement to create a SARC. Now, as far as highlighting differences, it's hard to do that in the middle of a year, which is why the SARC is is information about a year ago, our 2019-20 school year, because we can't discuss differences, let's say with suspensions and expulsions, or even CASP data that we will be taking this school year. So if you could be more specific about the area that you might want, then I could highlight and say, well, as far as we are going now, this is where we're moving, like they say, we're exceeding in suspensions or expulsions, or, we've hired more teachers because of a need, because of our, our as we embark in perhaps a hybrid learning situation when we come back from distance learning. So I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's a document that's really meant to capture an entire year's worth at the end of a school year, like graduation rates and dropouts and whatnot. So if you can be more specific in the area that you want, then I can attempt to answer your question. Otherwise, if I don't have an answer for you now, I can dig deeper for you regarding a specific area you want to know as far as differences between 2019-20 and what's happening now in 2021. I mean, I can tell you a huge difference is that this school year, we're in complete distance learning. I mean, we don't have CASP data to compare ourselves to the 19-20 school year. So that would be an area we'd be looking to. We are looking at our current diagnostic assessments that we're giving, and we're finding great growth and progress with our students in distance learning. So, it's hard to answer that question without more guidance on your part specifically, other than I can just tell you that it's a year ago. Information capturing from a year ago.
Perhaps, Jen, I hear what you're saying. There's so much information in the report card. So I did make a note that knowing a comparison of the part that says enrollment by grades and enrollment by student groups, like how does that compare? And I hear what you're saying as well. The timing is a little off. So I don't necessarily mean like this year that we're in. I mean like the current report card versus the one previous to the report card. I would love to have, and maybe maybe we can move it from consent in the future and have it in a different part of the agenda. I don't know if that would be appropriate, but just to have kind of more of a presentation on like, the differences, because I think that's one thing that would be great to keep an eye on. And it's just kind of what the only option I have right now is to dig through the a website or ask you to provide me with the previous ones, and then I can sift through it myself. But that seems like something that the staff should do. So that's why I wanted to ask about it.
And I appreciate your questions, but if you see the SARC itself, let's say this 2019-20 SARC gives you data from the year before, 18-19, and 17-18. So it
does in some categories. Yes, it does in some categories, but there's many categories that it doesn't. And so those are the ones I'm talking about that I would like to see.
Okay.
The ones that are presented as a comparison, I don't need those ones from you.
Okay, so can I ask you this so that I know where we're going with this? What is the intention to analyze? You know what I'm saying? I just want to know what is the purpose and how it's going to move us forward I guess is what I'm saying. And looking at the past and then looking at now. I mean, do we want to look way past? Are we looking trends? Like you were saying, enrollments by ethnicities? That I guess I'm just trying to kind of capture what it is that we're looking for.
If I may interject briefly.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think one of the things to recognize is that the SARC is a representation of material that is often presented during the course of the year. It is presented as a state summary. It goes up to the state. And one of the reasons it's on consent is because in theory, all of these things have been given to us. And many times in areas, for example, we see the seabeds. We have class size throughout. So I think there are probably some very specific items that you'd be interested in, Ms. Swanson. Mm-hmm. And those, frankly, I'd say send the questions over and then we can all get it. And then we can determine how to put it in the SARC for next year. And some of them, I think, as we go through the year, we'll recognize that we actually do see more of this information. For example, we have a very specific presentation on suspensions and expulsions during the course of the year. So going back much further, we actually do see that. And this is now a summary. It is, of course, interesting that in that particular category, they went to 0, as one would expect. Big surprise. So I think that we have some of this information that comes to us separately. And if there are specifics that you think should be added in this, I think that perhaps you could send them directly to Ani. Mm-hmm. Would that be acceptable to you, Director Silva? And
absolutely.
Trustee Swanson?
I'm open to that. I mean, I'm open to any of your guidance. I just wanted to make sure that my question is clear. And my question is, when I was report cards, it appeared to me that they were kind of a summary of so many bits and pieces of data that were presented with over the year. And it almost felt like a wonderful kind of like executive summary, like here at a glance is what's going on in these different sites. And so when I was reading them, there was that did have columns that reference previous years, and then there was other numbers that didn't. And so I was wanting to ask if we could have kind of a highlight snapshot of, Ani saying, hey, this year we had this amount of kids enrolled, and this year we have this other amount. And I'm just using enrollment as one example. And I just think, for the public and as a trustee, if we have a document, maybe there's another document, but if we have a document that sums up and kind of weaves together all this information about our sites, it'd be great to have it, which we have on this agenda, but then also be able to compare, because otherwise there's no context for the information.
You're muted,
So
Trustee.
I'm happy to.
Wait, I wrote SARC for about a decade. It's a template. So some of the stuff that you're asking for, I think John Paff is right on. It is a snapshot. The WASP goes into much more detail, but as we know, that's every half dozen years. So the SARC is kind of, I felt like it was a lot of work. It looks a lot more condensed than it was for a long time, but it gets shipped off to the state and you have to go dig around and find it. So it's not that community members are often referring to the SARC as opposed to, say, a WASC or other reports that are put out. But I would say if there are, instead, it feels like, Carolyn, your request is very broad and rather nebulous. And I think if specifics of, I would like to know, graduation rates, or I would like to know other specifics, then I think it's good in the future that we have a specific agenda item that we can kind of dive deep on things that are of import to the district and the community. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I emailed today letting letting Ralph and Ani know that I was going to pull it and ask for this data. I was hoping that that would kind of, give them a nod that to kind of have some sort of information or write me back to clarify. So next time, that would be excellent if we could kind of have that dialogue. I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think in this case, specifics are the answer. The focus of where do we want to look, and not just kind of across the board, but specifics of where should we start delving as a board. And that's probably good to talk about on literally January 30th, when we're thinking, what are our goals? What are things we want to attend to?
I was trying to kind of get some good data for that study session, but I'll go about it in a different manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. This is now on a separate action item. Brian, do you have anything?
I have very little, but here's why. I have an explanation as to why I don't have much. And you touched on it, I think, pretty well, President Paff, is that, again, if there's information that I want, this isn't where I would go to get it, because we have better sources. We have much more granular data that's presented to us on all these different things that are kind of summarized within this document. So it's great to kind of leaf through. For me, it was and go, oh, well, that's interesting. But if I really want to take a look at what's happening with expulsions, there's a better report for that. If what's happening with our grades here or this or that, they're just better. They're better sources for all of that stuff. If I want to know what's going on with facilities, Matt's going to be able to come to us with so much more data, and it'll give us a much broader picture. So it was interesting, but God, that was a long explanation for having no comment. So I have nothing more. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Clerk, if I may, or Mr. President, just a quick comment.
Well, I was going to go to John first, but yes,
Okay.
after. Mr. Walden?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Dr. Porras?
Yeah, I think just we did get the notice that this would be pulled this afternoon, but we just didn't have time to address some of it. So we certainly can bring back any particular item or topic back for a board discussion. That's not a problem at all. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that this particular the SARC is a form-driven topic. We were given a template by the state specifically, and it needs to be filled out just as the state asks us to fill it out. Otherwise, it'll be returned, and we have to format it correctly. So the data you see is exactly as the state asks for it. We are more than happy, though, to if there's just different sections, we can have other folks come and present, whether it's to principals, et cetera. So by all means, just let us know ahead of time, and we can kind of get that prepared, and happy to do so. But I agree that the form itself is not the greatest form in the world. It is more condensed than it used to be. Trustee Dawson is right. It used to be a very long, convoluted document, and they've tried to trim it down. And just unfortunately, it's one of many different forms that the state asks us to produce.
Thank you, Dr. Porras. Student advisory, any comments?
I do not have any comments.
Thank you very much. We'll open for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to comment on the SARC? Seeing no hands arise.
Oh, Ani has one.
Sorry, I missed you there, Ani. I'm trying to look for people waving their hands.
It's okay. No, I just wanted to just affirm what Ralph said, and that I'll be happy to come back and offer any more detail that is asked of us. I also want to point out that because this is data that is completed, there's data that's put in by the state, and there are some errors. And so I just want to let everyone know that I'm making those corrections. And what will be posted to the state will be the correct information, such as the average salary average salary for a teacher district-wide was incorrect in the SARC. And thanks to Trustee Paff, you know, and I spoke with Song about it. We're like, whoa, this is not correct. And so that has been corrected. So I just want you to know that the information, even though the state has some misinformation about us, what is going to go to the public on our PGUSD website, as well as the CDE, which is where we must post the SARCs for each school by February 1, will be correct. Okay, just want you to know.
Thank you very much, Director Silva. And I would like, there are some things in there which we know, but should be pointed out independently. One of the items is if you go through all 5 schools, out of all of our teachers, when this was taken, there was one that was basically they're all certificated. That is, we are in a very good stead in that particular item. Our books are consistent across the elementaries. That's very nice to see. And basically we're looking at late editions on all of them. So I appreciate the information, and thank you for putting it together as you did. And thank you for answering my questions. With that, I open up for motion to accept the SARC as presented.
Also moved.
Seconded.
Motion was made by Brian Swanson, seconded by Christy Dawson. Student advisory vote.
Aye.
Roll call vote, please, Mandy.
Trustee Pfaff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes 5-0. Thank you all so very much. We move on to our next, our first action discussion item. Song, this is the financials. I believe this is you.
That's correct. Congratulations, President Pfaff. And we have Auditor Ryan Zielinski, the manager of Bailey. But I'd like to go over real quick first about the format, of a financial audit. Audit reports is always about prior year. We have to close the book first. The district has to close the books, what we call when we present the books after closing in September to the board, we call unaudited actuals. And then the auditors will come in for the final audit in October. Most of the time, they will schedule with us to make sure staff, is ready to present the boatload of documentation. And they'll go through the process and they'll finalize the audit in December because they, by law, they have to present the audit to the state on or before December 15. And then it comes to the board to accept the report, the audit report, because by law, we do not have really the luxury of either agree or disagree. Obviously, the auditors will meet with staff and me to go over any items, to talk about that before presenting to the board, before finalizing the report. We have the right to comment, and then it comes to the board in front for acceptance. It's on or before January 31st, but because of a pandemic, the state extended the timeline to March, but we still adhere to the timeline because, we are in the grind. The business office is doing their job, and the auditor finished the examination of our books. So we presented to the board before the final deadline in January. But again, we have really the option to extend it, and we're not doing it. So in terms of the format on page 94, there are really 5 different kinds that I like to point out. They're not 5 different reports, but just different items. The first one is 2019 and 20 financial audit. And the financial audit encompasses the general fund, food service fund, adult ed, and so on, except Fund 21, which is a building fund, or Measure D, which is the bond fund, Measure A, which is the bond fund, which in itself, it requires a financial and performance audit. In addition to those 2 reports, we also have the ASB fundings, associated student body. We have an organized or formal ASB body, and that's in the high school, and the itemized in that, and the auditor will talk a little bit about that. In addition to those 3 items, there are also 2 other items which the auditor is required to inform the board. It's called communication with governance letter relating to the district financial audit. And then the last one on page 895, the board packet is communication with governance letter relating to district's bond audit. The auditor is by law, they're required to inform our board what they think about financial reports. So those are the critical documents that we have included in here. The audit reports, the formal audit reports, and also the ASB findings that are on our website as well. And for the public to see that, because we're doing the Zoom meeting, so we're not providing hard copies, but they're available for the public on our website. And with that, I'm gonna let Mr. Zielinski is here, and he's a PowerPoint to present. And do we have to unmute Mr. Zielinski?
Yeah, I'm trying to find him right now. I'm not finding him on the list. There he goes. He's on. He can unmute himself now.
Oh, okay, great.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
good, good. Let me share my screen. Okay, all right. So here's the beginning of the PowerPoint. Like the song said, my name is Ryan Zielinski, part of Eide Bailey, formerly VTD, Vavrant Trine Day and Company. We merged with Eide Bailey last year. And so this is just the PowerPoint we'll discuss briefly. And is it gonna, there we go. Okay, so first off, the audit process is what we do is we come out to the district and select a sample of school sites, and typically there we'll test certain aspects of compliance, usually around attendance. It's given by the state of California with what the procedures we have to look at. So we don't really have much decision in that part. But we'll go out to a couple school sites, test some of those areas, and then typically look at student body procedures. And then after we do that, that's usually around February, March, April maybe. And then that's the first visit. And then then usually around April, May, or June, we come to the actual district office, and that's where we're looking at the procedures of the district office, usually around like cash receipts, disbursements, payroll, those kind of processes, and seeing if there's any weaknesses in there. And then we'll come after, like Song said, after you guys close the books, we come in, we do some other procedures, more financial ones, looking at, let's say, accounts receivable, AR, lots of revenue expenses. And then we usually issue the report by around like maybe early December, but by the December 15th deadline normally. Like Song said, this one was March 31st, but we were still able to get the audit report in time to present it in January. And as everyone knows, this year was a crazy year, especially for the audit process. Normally we're there in person, and if we need things, we can just jump over to Song's office or whoever's office and take 5 minutes to answer the question. This year it took significantly longer, just with everything and the amount of time that the district personnel had to do to scan information. Every invoice or everything that we requested, the district office personnel went in and scanned it and emailed it to us, and we had lots of emails going to a lot of people. So it was a interesting year, but we did get through it. So I just want to commend everyone that helped us with that and get it done. Okay, so the main audit report, or the main opinion letter, we had in all material aspects, the financial statements is accurate in a material, like I said, in material aspect. That's the front page, or that's the first opinion letter. That's kind of the district as a whole. And then in the back of the report, there's a few other opinion letters that kind of narrow down. The first one is on internal control. The second one is on federal compliance, and the third one is on state compliance. So federal and state, we had no compliance issues, so that's great. We had one finding for the internal control, and what happened here was there was an accounts receivable that wasn't reported on the books. It wasn't, we didn't find new money. It wasn't money that the district missed. They filed the claim for the funds, but what happened was, since it didn't come in prior to June 30th, you have to record an accounts receivable, and that part was missed. But it wasn't anything, it was just an oversight. It just got missed. With everything, with the COVID and everything, we have seen an increase in findings for multiple school districts. So you're not alone. And like I said, it wasn't new money that we found or the district didn't know about. And okay, so kind of the structure of the audit report, the easiest read, the kind of cliff notes, the summary of it is going to be on PDF page 7. And this is just kind of the cliff notes of it. It's kind of the district's narrative of the financial statements, and it also compares the current year, or the June 30th, 2020 year, with the previous year, so you can kind of see the changes. And then after that, the financial statements start showing up. And the first couple are this statement of net position, and then the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is, we call it the entity-wide financial statements, because when you guys are going through the year, you guys are on a modified accrual basis. And so all your general fund, your cafeteria fund, you have all those. Well, what the entity-wide ones is, it accumulates all of those funds, and then it also has, we add in the capital assets and the long-term debt of the district that it normally isn't on the fund financial statements. And then after that is the fund financial statements, and then that's what you guys you see most of the time. You look at the general fund financial statements and the other ones, and so those ones are the most common ones that you are used to seeing. And there is a column for non-major ones, and what this is if a fund is large enough, it gets presented by itself, and then if they're smaller funds, we aggregate them into one presentation column in the financial statements. But at the back of the report, we do split out all those individual funds, so you can refer to those if you would like to. And then after the financial statements, comes the notes of them, and that just, if there's a line for capital assets and you want to know a little bit more information about that, you can refer to the notes of the financial statements, and it'll kind of give you what the balance was last year, the activity for the year, and then what the ending was, and also along with depreciation expense or things like that. And then further on into the report is the supplementary schedules. This is the ADA of the district. There's multiple ones. There's the financial trends and analysis. Usually that one's a pretty popular one to look at, because it kind of shows has the most current year and then the 2 previous years of just the general fund. So you can kind of see that activity there. Moving along. Okay, so on the statement of net position, the net position had a total of negative 20.6 million, with unrestricted making up 37.4 million of that. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on as to why that's such a negative number. And then one thing to note, your general bonds was $41 million at the end of the year. And your OPEB liability was 7.8, and that's your future retirement costs for employees and retirees. And then the biggest obligation of a district is the net pension liability. That's the STRS and PERS obligations. A couple years ago, GASB 68 came out, and school districts were required to include that information with their financial statements. So if we take all of that activity just from the net pension obligation, it actually decreased your net position by 32.8 million, just that activity. So that when that hit the books for a lot of school districts, it turned a positive net position into a negative net position. So but you can see that negative 32.8, if you, so that's the main reason for that large, or not the negative net position. And then just a couple highlights of the year. The general fund did increase by 716,000 to an ending fund balance of 5.4 million. The general fund increased 1.2. You did issue the Series C of the EdTech bond, the 2.1 million this year. Available reserves of the general fund ended around 11%. And the state gives out a minimum fund balance that is not a target. That's we don't want any district to be at 3%, because if you're at that state minimum, then usually funds are getting a little bit tighter. And then if you fall below that, you're below the state minimum. And then the county office and the state will say, okay, well, what's going on? Why is the reserve so low? And then ADA has remained steady from the prior year. I think it went up 1 ADA from last year. And that is it. That's the presentation. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I will love to answer them.
Ryan, thank you so very much. Song, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Just a couple of things. One is the last slide talking about the surplus, operating surplus, 716,000. What we present to the board normally we break down into, we talk about restricted, donations and things that we can't control. And the auditors get called combined general fund, unrestricted and restricted. So this is one point clarification, because the auditors, they prescribe by audit guidelines and how they report present the report and how they examine our books. The second part, is about the ASB findings. We have addressed that. We talked with the administration and staff. So a lot of things that some of the items I could say there's good intention on staff, and they just didn't really, some of them, they were not very much aware on how we, measure things or look at the controls and the management of funds. So we have met, and I think corrective measures have been implemented. So hopefully next year will be more, much less in terms of issues and fewer findings. And then the other thing, one last thing, sorry, is unmodified. So I think over is really good. It's presented fairly, and Mrs. Zelinski said it in the first page, and it was in the board cover as well.
Thank you, Ms. Chin-Ben-Dib. Greatly appreciated. Board, I'll go ahead around, starting with Mr. Swanson and then going to Mr. Walton and then Ms. Swanson and Ms. Dawson.
I don't really have anything at this time. It's nice just to see this come through every year. We've gotten pretty used to it and know that, this was the same team that we had on it last year, right? It was just now under a different company name. So
that's correct. Right.
Yeah, I don't have anything further at this time.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Walton?
Nothing for me.
Thank you, John. Ms. Swanson?
I don't have anything about the audit, but I will say I changed my audio because I guess I was spotty before, so I'm hoping that improves. Please let me know if it continues to be spotty.
We'll do that. Thank you very much. I was hearing you consistently, but with a little bit of breakup, but it's better now. Thank you. Ms. Dawson?
Yeah, so and I have a question. I know ASB, having been in that for over a decade, it is a tough spot because you've got kids and treasurers and so many different clubs running in and out. And my question is, did you give Dr. Hadquist, like, does he get the opportunity to go to CSBA to that whole training?
The good question, I'm not directly talking to Dr. Hadquist, but we're working with the principal, assistant principal, and also the person who's in charge of ASB at a high school. And she did go to a training, but we will certainly check with administration if Dr. Hadquist would like to attend.
Well, and because the purchase orders are being passed within ASB, correct? That are okaying the funds being spent by clubs, or as an example, somehow the counseling conference. I mean, people have to be voting on that and passing this as it goes through ASB, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I would say Dr. Hadquist would, I mean, I got to go and it was so helpful. I just think that it's a very tough position because there are so many moving parts to the whole thing. And I would just highly recommend that, because I would bet that would cut down a lot of this confusion. And I also think clubs that to raise funds in the summer, you have to have permission to raise funds. And you have to deposit funds in a quick manner. It's not okay, as mentioned here, that somebody goes and puts it in a personal account and they show up later with it. I mean, it should be nice if those rules were a little more clearly delineated for the kids, the class, and advisor. I just think we'd have much better results, and I think that's such a tough area because of all the moving pieces. Thank you.
I think it's a great idea. I think well, I'll follow up with the administration at the high school, see and offer to Dr. Hadquist, because the budget person at the high school attended that the workshop, and she came back saying that she has learned a lot, and also refresher, you know, some guidance, some new rules. It's good to sometime to understand, oh yeah, I pick up a couple of things, it would help a lot. Certainly, I think it's a good suggestion.
But, and is that budget person in the class when the rules are being passed, when the different POs are coming through? I mean,
Yes.
It would be.
Yes, I think the person was there, but I think there's a different administration now. You know, it has to be, I think, I think they understand that there was certain heightened level of vigilance.
Yes.
You know, staff, for example, one of the things that we look at, excuse me, we look at internally before the auditors is, why would we buy something from Craigslist? You know, understand that the intention was good to save money, but then from an audit standpoint, the burden of proof is on us.
Yes.
You know, there's no receipts, there's certain procedures that, you know, that I think we just need to bring to attention. So I think they understand that.
Great, thank you so much. I hope it gets better.
I have just a couple odds and ends. One is the ASB, and we've talked about this in the past, but it was brought up here again. GoFundMe and control. I guess I am not confident, particularly this year, that we have strong controls there, but I'm also not sure how you get them. And the second is in general, this report is very solid, and I greatly appreciate the effort that you and your team have put in on it, Ms. Shinbei-Dib, to put us in this position that we get a very favorable report, generally speaking. So thank you very, very much. With that, Gabby, any questions, concerns?
But I'll let.
Oh, lost vote on voice on Gabrielle. You're muted. Do you have anything? Did you want anything?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. Oh, no. Okay, we're all good. You're good. I'm good. Open for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to ask any questions or express comments on this item? Dr. Hadquist.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted, my name was mentioned, so I just wanted to make sure that I commented on this one. I'd be happy to go to any trainings. We, as a leadership class, we try our best to be diligent every week. We review the budget and all of the approvals. Often have a lot of questions. We also have the clerk at all of our meetings. So we will continue to try to improve that process, and it would, I think, definitely be helpful if we had some treasurers and myself attend the trainings.
Thank you. Seeing no other hand raised, I'll bring this back to the board. Board, do I have a motion to accept action discussion A?
I move we accept action. I'm not, the 1920 financial audit report, measures A, financial and performance audit report. I move we accept.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Christy Dawson, seconded by Brian Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. And again, Ms. Chinbedib, thank you so very much. And to your team, this is really, we're still navigating the financial straits that are thrust upon us. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zielinski.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Zielinski. Okay, with that, we move on to Measure D, Series A, Year 1 Priority Projects. Mr. Kelly, you have a presentation you'd like to put up?
I do. Let me put it up. All right, can you see the title?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Matt Kelly, Director of Facilities and Transportation. And this presentation is going to be on the Measure D priority projects, which we're bringing back from last board meeting, and also survey results that were taken late part of last week and early part of this week. First, I want to go through some of the background and history of how we got here. And so at the October 25th, 2018 board meeting, we presented a capital projects list. Highlighted were some of the projects that we are that we're bringing to you tonight for approval for priority. And so that was our first look at some of the capital projects list. I included the board notes from this, and this was on an approval, a 4-0 approval. We then, in August 22nd, 2019, brought the list back, added some things to it, got a little bit more depth. In this case, we did add another project that's on for approval tonight. That's the high school intercom. Again, still had the K&L, the track replacement, and the stadium replacement, and also the John Deere mower on August 22nd, 2019. This was an information item, and at that meeting, Dale Scott was also there, and at that time presented the results of the survey that he took with our citizens and our staff to get some feedback to the board on whether we were going to pass this maintenance bond or not. Shortly after, on October 3rd, we brought back another capital projects list. This time we again provided some more detail. We started looking at cash flow on how the money was going to be spent based off of Dale's comments or Dale's information he gave us. So this is actually just the high school projects here. Again, we had K&L and the high school, and we also had the mower too as well on a different sheet. At that meeting, we passed resolution 1035 and 1036, which allowed us to go out to vote for the bond. And from there, I don't think we have had any other presentations of the capital projects list. So moving forward from here, we're gonna be bringing a draft plan to the board at the February 30th special board meeting. On that plan, we're going to have the list of projects that are in this board packet and we presented last week. And we're going to still have when they're going to complete it, approximate timing on them, approximate given a budget number. And then once that's approved, we're going to say that we can't change that list until there's board approval to change that list. Within it too, we're going to provide backup for the public and for staff, description of projects and reasons why we're doing projects. Like for instance, why do we do roofing? Why do we do painting? And it's more to educate our staff and our community on why we're doing these maintenance projects. And in some of the survey results, which I'll hit on later, it was apparent to me that communication, and I think Trustee Carolyn brought this up last meeting, that communication is going to be key, and education as well. And like I said, I'll hit that a little bit later. And then we'll also within the plan, we're going to have a communications plan. And that communications plan, for example, will have things on when do we visit school site councils? How do employees or sites submit for projects to the facilities and business office? So I'll be visiting school site councils, being part of those meetings, as well as staff meetings. We'll have a website, and then we'll probably put together a community flyer. And there'll be more detail in the plan when we present this on the 30th on when and how many times we'll be communicating. We're also going to have an administrative plan within it, and it's going to tell us how we deal with change orders, how we deal with project approval timelines. My expectation is that I'll be bringing you projects, and it's either going to be projects from what we've identified in my department, or there are projects that have been identified at the site level. And those projects are going to come early. They're not going to be coming to you in January or February for approval, so we can start design and get them done that summer. To do this right, we have to have approvals sometimes a year, maybe further in advance. Some projects maybe not a year, but we really want to do that planning in the fall time and go out to bid in the December, January time, where we can get the best price for our projects, so we can do in the summertime. And not all projects are going to be done in the summer. There's going to be some done during the school year as well. And then last but not least, on February 4th, we'll be bringing that final plan back to the board for approval. I want to jump into some of the survey results. First, I just want to put this slide in really fast. And this was a slide from Dale's presentation in 2019. And when he asked the community, would you vote for this bond? And during the polling, he came out 68% yes. The bond passed, I think, at 67.91%. So, I look at that and say, okay, well, his survey is pretty good. He asked the right questions. And so when I devised this survey to staff, I used his same questions because I wanted to use those questions and compare them to the community and what the community says. So for instance, on the community question that Dale Scott asked, he would say, here are some details regarding the proposed bond. For each statement, please tell me if it would be more likely or less likely to vote for the bond. Funds to be repaired to leaky roofs and replace outdated plumbing. So the staff question that was similar to that we compared it to would sound something, what funds would be used to repair and replace aging plumbing and infrastructure. Are you, and then the options were more likely, less likely, undecided, or don't agree to agree this statement. And so those are multiple choice answers. What we found, and these are how we compared them. On the left was Dale Scott and Associates results that he presented to the board on September 5th. And these are the results of the questions. And I think we had about 146 or 147 respondents to the survey. So thank you very much, staff, for taking the time to answer these questions. You'll see as we kind of go through some of these, and there's quite a few graphs. So, but there's some that staff and survey completely agree with, and there's some that they're maybe in total disagreement about, or think they're I should say some are more priority than others. Classrooms and facilities, of course, rank high with the teachers and also with the community. What was interesting though is as we get into athletics and playgrounds, playgrounds were ranked a little bit lower by staff, but higher by our community. And restrooms, those were kind of about the same. Irrigation systems for saving water, our community said, yes, we want you to save water. Our staff, not as important to them, and rightfully so. I mean, our teachers, they're advocates for our students. So an irrigation system is probably not much interest to them, but teaching, something that directly impacts the classroom would be more important to them. One thing to point out here is right here with the athletic fields on both sides. Both of them rank pretty low as far as more likely of thinking that's important or more likely to vote for the bond. I think they were the ones that ranked the lowest out of all of the questions. That, and then I think the second ranking lowest was painting schools. And so I look at some of those and say, okay, what do we have to do? Those would be my key. Those projects would be key for communication to staff and to community. If we decide to do them, if we decide, okay, we have to do these things, we're really going to have to concentrate on how we communicate with those projects. Then what I did is I took out, extrapolated the more likely answer. So when someone answered more likely, and I just did this as a comparison, because what I thought is I could really get a good gauge of what is the priority of our community and our staff looking at all these projects. So here's a comparison. These rank pretty close to each other, and they're kind of still the same. Alarm systems and communication systems, staff and community is pretty far off on how they think about those things. And we'll keep going through here. And then again on athletic fields and the pool ranked pretty low, and staff and community was pretty opposite of what they think the priorities are on that. And again, here's the athletic facilities. Again, ranking low and also having somewhat different opinions on it. I then took each of those, and these are still the more likely, and I sorted them by the highest percentage of the answers. So for instance, the 83% on the top, that means 83% of people said, yes, they're more than likely to have the bond if we decide to replace outdated electrical systems. So for our community, our electrical systems ranked the highest, and for our staff, leaky roofs and replacing outdated plumbing ranked the highest. I broke these up into about the top 6 and into 3 categories, like the highest rated ones, middle, and lowest rated ones. So in these highest rated ones, there are some similarities. Obviously got leaky roofs, more roofs and gutters, plumbing, and modernizing classrooms were all some of the most important things that both our community and our staff ranked the highest. And then our middle level ones, again, what you're starting to see a trend here is that the middle ones, our community ranked higher as a percentage than our staff did, and as far as percentage wise. And then our lowest rated ones, these are the ones that came in the lowest. You'll see a big discrepancy again between the numbers, where our community was in the 50s and our staff was all the way down 29%. I think they're more likely to think that the athletic fields need to be replaced. So we did have some that were the same on this one as well. And the highlights are not coming. Oh, there we go. Here the highlights are coming up. So the portable classrooms, painting schools, athletic facilities, the pool, and then maintaining, painting the buildings. Those are all ranked lowest as priorities for our community and our staff. In addition to asking about the Measure D, we asked them about COVID and how it relates to facilities. The first one being if they feel safe or they agree with it, that these measures would provide a safe teaching and learning environment. For social distancing, 72% said more likely, 14% are less likely. And all these questions are ranked around the same. I think they're in the high 70s, low 80s. This is for cleaning and disinfecting. 78% of staff said they feel safer with cleaning, and then hand washing again, 75%, and with 13% less likely. And then our HVAC, I think ranked the highest at 78%. I will say though, in the comments that came up is that there was a lot of comments about that I remember about having a vaccine probably being the safest thing for returning to school. Let's turn our attention to the priority projects. And the first one being the high school intercom and bell system. The existing intercom portion of the bell system at the high school is completely inoperable. Over the years, there's been an addition of speakers to the system. The system can no longer handle the amount of speakers that are on there. Basically, it just doesn't have enough power to transmit a signal over all of the speakers. So what happens is that we'll have emergency or just messages coming across, and not everyone at the site is getting them, which creates quite a bit of a safety concern that site has expressed to me when we can't communicate to our entire campus through our intercom system and let them know, of something or a danger that's coming on, or just letting them know of somewhere they need to be. So with that said, we believe this is a priority project, and would like to proceed with approval and start getting bids on this project. Next is the K&L dry rot and termite damage. We just recently received construction plans week of January 11th. And this is to repair the damage from dry rot and termite on the fascia and the structural glulam beams. In addition to that, the scope for this project is not only going to be just the repair, but it's also going to be the removal of the roof, because to expose the top part of the glulam beams to see what kind of damage there is. And that's going to be something where that's a huge unknown for us right now. When contractors bid on this, they're not going to be able to give us a price. So there will be a change order for sure coming on this one to do that work, just because we don't know the damage and what needs to be replaced. So we're going to be removing the roof, repairing the damage to the wood that's happened, repairing the damage to the drainage system from the roofing system, all the rocks getting in there, which we believe is the cause of all this damage. And then a complete roof replacement and a complete exterior painting of the building. Next project is the high school stadium field and track replacement. So the stadium was put in 2009, the field and the track. And at that time, the expected use was about 8 to 10 years. We're at year 11 right now, and looking at year 12 possibly. And what happens is that the green fibers, they begin to fail. No matter how much maintenance you try to do on them, they just start laying down. You can't keep them to stay up. And what happens is the rubber infill doesn't stay in place anymore. And when that doesn't stay in place, that's compromising the safety of the turf itself. So you might start seeing more concussions, more injuries. The good news is that we did have it tested 2 years ago, I think now, because we didn't have a season this year, and it did come back good as far as concussion. But we still feel like that this is an opportunity to replace the field now, before that infield starts to become an issue and we start having injuries. So we'll be looking at having this approved, and then moving forward with staff and a team of from the site and possibly community to look at, what type of field we want to put in. And there's always things that come in with colors and stuff like that. So we'll put a team together and then present the final bid to the board in a couple of weeks from now for construction, hopefully in the summer. Now, I will say, I think Mr. Paff asked me, is there anything that could delay this project? And the only thing I can see delaying this project is if CIF decides to do sports in the summertime. And that would be the only thing that I could see happening. And in that case, we would probably try to put it off. We'd have to put it off for another year unless there's a window to get it done in the fall. And then the stadium track, I wanted to hit on that a little bit too. So in this picture, you can kind of see the black area of that. And so the track is really an overlay of that surface there. And it's kind of like that overlay protects that foam that's underneath. And to overlay it is significantly cheaper than to have to replace the underneath part of it. And so what we're really doing when we say we're not necessarily replacing the track, we're overlaying it and protecting the underneath of it. More of a preventive maintenance type of project than a replacement project. Next is the existing bell system at Forest Grove. And this system's completely failed as far as the clocks and the bell system goes. The front end controller of it needs replacing. And we've had it looked at by a low voltage contractor. Our guys have looked at it and there's just not parts or anything to replace it. So 75% of the clocks have failed on it. So they're using temporary clocks right now in the schools. And the school site they have some safety and scheduling concerns if they don't have this system. So basically without this system, you're manually having to do a bell system, which may mean that Mr. Rogerman has to get over the intercom and say, this is the bell. And so it would be a little bit inconvenient and I think create also a little bit of a safety issue as well, not having a schedule going on out there. Next is a mower replacement. So in our grants department, we have 2 mowers, both a little over 20 years old. We have a John Deere 1600. It's a wide area mower. And then we have a John Deere 1435, which is more of a front end mower. The wide area mower is, like it says, it's got more horsepower. It can cover a bigger area in one pass than the smaller one. So what we're looking at replacing is the bigger 1600 mower. And in the picture on the left, you'll see a crack in the front end on the deck of that. We've tried to repair it and just structurally, there's no way to repair it. Underneath of that deck is the blades. We've called in and gotten pricing on a new deck and got a quote of about $7,000 for a new deck. The biggest issue being that investing $7,000 on a 20-year machine that we can't get any other parts for, to me is a little bit of a waste of money, and replacement is actually needed. So if we replace the deck for $7,000 and we can't find a couple parts later on, we're basically throwing away $7,000 if we have to replace this in less than a year. So next is where we run into is the issue with our existing mower that we're using right now. It's fine for winter months. It's smaller. It has less horsepower, but in the spring and summer, it's going to be under some major stress with the growing of the grass, and it more than likely will break down. It won't keep up. We already know it doesn't keep up, and productivity on that machine is far less. With 2 grounds guys over 80 acres for them to cover, then they start missing out on other things that have to get done. The other reasons is that it's, this is a maintenance bond. It's being used for maintenance. This is a machines that we've used for 20 years, 3 to 5 times a week, and getting a 20-year life out of it. It just shows the how the guys treat and can fix our machines when they go down and make them last. And then if our 1435 or smaller one does go down, we kind of look at what's called, which might kind of sound crazy, the 1/3 rule. And basically what happens in any type of sod is if you let it grow and you're cutting more than 1/3 of the grass, you start damaging the grass. And when you start damaging the grass, it doesn't grow, and you're going to start getting, our lawns and our grass areas are going to start getting more stressed and potential there for more injury when we have athletics and PE come back. Another reason being scheduling. So when we do come back, our schedule on our mowing is tight, and we tend to get in between PE classes, or we're getting out there and mowing in between when school gets out and when the sports team gets onto a field, and it has to be done fast and efficiently. That little small mower is not going to keep up, and it's going to start delaying class time and athletics time. And then I want to stop right here and talk about operations, and I really categorize our equipment, like our mowers, our trucks, our trailers that we have to use for operations, and that I put as a priority to this bond to purchase right away. When we have vans that can't make it up the hill anymore, or we can't take out to Laguna Seca because we're taking the stage out for graduation, we have to ask Carmel to come over and their trailers and their trucks to take out the stage to Laguna Seca because our vans just can't make it up. They're an integral part of our support to the entire district. They deliver curriculum, they deliver lunches. They're the maintenance trucks. They're there to work on our classrooms when things go down. Without that proper equipment, and that equipment right now is failing. We have a small staff. We're okay with a small staff. We just need the right equipment to do what we need to do with that staff. Without that equipment, we start falling behind, and that starts to affect what's going on at the school site. That's why you don't see questions on the survey about operations. Operations is something we have to do no matter what. Getting an opinion on operations on whether we should have a truck to deliver food or not is not necessarily a question we would be asking our community or our staff. Last is our HVAC COVID replacement or modification. So I'm asking, actually, sorry, let me get this first. Our current plan right now is, and I put a little sketch right there, is to run our units. And what we want to do is, what we're trying to do is force the dirty air that's in the classroom out. And we do that by obviously running the system, bringing in fresh air and pushing out the dirty air. And this is really just an attempt to not have to filter as much air as we have to, even with a HEPA filter, even with a MERV 13 or a MERV 14. This would be a better plan than installing in maybe one of those filters. I think we're starting to get caught up on the HVAC and filtration system as being the stopgap of COVID, and it's really not. We have a plan, and it includes filtration, and that plan is hand washing, masks, disinfecting, social distancing, and temperature and symptom checks. We can look as easily as the Kaiser super spreader incident. I think there was another super spreader incident. ASHRAE makes these hospitals and these facilities have better filtration systems than we can ever imagine, and they're having super spreader events. They have HEPA filters. They're exchanging air 100% and bringing in fresh air, and they're still having super spreader events. We're going to have that. I mean, if we say we're just counting on filtration, we will have a super spreader event. We have to have all of these things in place, and I believe what we have in place is adequate. But I did put money in there to start looking at what can we put into our system that we can use in the future. So my recommendation is to move ahead, not on replacement of our systems, but on what we can do to look at to make them better. And that might be UVC disinfection, induct air disinfection, upper air disinfection, or it might just be, we just do a standalone HEPA filter in our classrooms. And so if we want to bring in someone to get a recommendation, we can do that. But I believe whatever we do, we need to add it to our system and be able to use it later on when we replace our units. Our units are fine for right now. They work. That's why we have them later on the priority list, is because we have other needs before we have filtration systems, or when we identified and we had other needs, because we still have useful life in those systems for another couple of years. Oh, sorry, moving on, I got ahead of myself. So yeah, so we looked at UVC induct air disinfection or standalone HEPA filter. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. And then last thing is funding. And so K&L and the stadium projects, they're not going to need support from the general fund or reserves. These are projects will go into design right away, bid it, but construction won't start until probably May. And that's when our Measure D funds become available. So we're not gonna have to tap into general or reserves. And then the high school and Forest Grove Intercom Bell projects, those may need funding from the general fund to bridge the gap. But by the time we get quotes in, we take it back to the board for approval, we do contracts, we order materials. We believe that bridge, that gap is gonna be is not as big. And we'll be able to have those Measure D funds available right away. Staff will work with bond counsel though, if we do have to do bridge funding, to make sure we do it right. And then the HVAC project, it's kind of just unknown right now. We're going to start that process and start the planning. I don't know right now if we're going to need bridge funding or a gap to bridge the funds of the gap. And then with all of these, of course, what we've done in the past and the technology guys have been successful with is asking to have some of those terms of the POs pushed out a little bit so we can use the bond funds when they come available for payment. And that's it. Let me turn this off.
Mr. Kelly, thank you so very much for that presentation. Thank you for the amount of effort, and it's not just between last meeting and this meeting, in working towards what our bond issues are, and I'm sorry, where we expect to spend them, and frankly, going back to Mr. Scott and working with him even back when we started this bond. All of this effort is greatly appreciated, and as we move forward, I don't want to leave out how grateful I am and the board is for your efforts. So thank you. With that, board comments. We'll start with Ms. Swanson and go to Ms. Dawson, Mr. Walton, and Mr. Swanson. Carolyn?
Ooh. I almost want to wait till the end. Is that okay to go last?
Well, not really.
I kind of want to. It's not okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'll go now. I really liked the presentation. Thank you, Director Kelly. It was, I was going over this for like 2 hours this afternoon, and I was going back and forth, and every time I had a question, I was able to find the answer in the papers. And even though you presented in a variety of different ways, it's really consistent, at least for what I had found. So that gave me confidence. It just felt really nice. And I'm not saying that you don't normally do that, but it's just wonderful when you're reading something for that length of time for it to really shine. So thank you. The priorities, I trust that you know what the priorities are and that they're the 7 things listed, because I can't deliberate, on them. You're the subject matter expert on those, and they make sense to me. I did have a small question about the intercom and the bell systems for Forest Grove and the high school. When did those stop working?
The high school one, it was probably about, we started having, well, we've had issues with it for the last couple of years, but have been able to repair, make repairs to it. It completely probably went down a year plus ago. Well, actually longer than that because we've been in school. So probably 2 years now.
Wow. Wow. Okay, and then the painting of the campus, I found that to be so interesting because I remember thinking, oh, the high school really needs a new paint job. But seeing that it was kind of low on the list, I mean, I wasn't going to say do it right now, but it was an interesting bit of information. And I can understand why it's not a major priority if we have leaking pipes or other things. And also I wanted to understand about the painting. It seems like, but I'm not an expert on this, it seems like in order to get to the stage where you're ready to paint, you're first going to have to replace the termite damage, put the gutters on, you know, like there's steps to it. So it's kind of like icing on the cake and that's maybe why it's also further down. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to repair the damage before you paint, because really the paint's not just a color. You know, people just look at it as like almost, you know, lipstick on a pig. It does more than that. It protects the wood. It protects the surface that it's on from, you know, from water damage and wind damage and stuff like that. So there is a purpose to painting, a maintenance purpose, a facilities purpose to it. So we try to when I looked at it, I mean, there's so many priorities right now. You know, everything is one, and right now, and choosing which one. I mean, right now you got to look at the worst. These are the worst right now. We have a whole other list that we still want to do, that we presented last meeting for year one, and then we have David Avenue that we have to discuss because that's in major disrepair right now. We have to do something with that. So that's a discussion. That's a board level discussion on what the future of David Avenue is before we dump. We put invest a lot of money into that site.
Thank you. I did kind of compare what I saw listed on the report cards, and I know that those report cards have information that's delayed a little bit. But I also know that those report cards are providing information to the state. So I was just kind of curious when I was reviewing this, like the maintenance items that are listed as poor or fair at the site for the report cards, I was like, I would look and see like, okay, are they on this list? And where are they at in priority? And I was able to find them all on the list, which, like I said, it was just, it felt like it was really well done. Like there was a lot of effort put in. And let me see, there was like one small thing at the middle school, the flooring, it's listed in 2023 to 2025. Maybe we need to bump that up because it was listed on the report card. You know, I have like little tweaks and questions about those types of things, but I think tonight we're really trying to focus on the priority project. So I don't want to derail us too much. So I'm just thumbing through here to see. I liked your description of the mowers because at first when I saw that, I was like, oh gosh, like how do we reconcile with spending that much money on a lawnmower? But I like that you said this has to happen at a specific time. This affects the kids, you know, it has to happen quick. You have to get in and get out, and it's a preventative maintenance type of item. So that made sense to me. I do have something for David Avenue, but I'm not going to ask to put it on as a priority tonight. And the only other thing that is future looking, but just to make sure that we don't forget in the bidding of when we finally get to the point when we're going to paint the buildings. I know that some of our buildings have really old paint on them, which may or may not mean that they have chemicals in them that we're not supposed to, have on site anymore, that need to be remediated in a really professional way. So I just wanted to bring that up and make sure that we're kind of looking at that and building that into the potential cost for any of the maintenance jobs that may irritate, agitate that paint, and then also ultimately when we paint them.
Right.
And that's all I have for your priority list. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Trustee Swanson, thank you so very, very much. You're absolutely correct. The one item I missed is the interior surfaces flooring at the middle school, and would be interested in understanding what that really means. And on that, Matt, the fit list that is in the SARC, that is created by you?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Ms. Dawson.
I very much appreciated the presentation tonight. I thought the detail was excellent. I liked it when you juxtaposed community and staff and getting input. I thought that was really excellent. I was going to say one of the things to address as we move forward that we began to talk about last week was communication. And I was thinking as much detail and as much thought has gone into this, as you go through these different steps, it might be nice through the principals and their communication with their contingency out there, if they can have a blurb from you about things that are going on the site. That would reach the families, the students, and I think it would be really helpful in highlighting the way the bond money is being spent and allows them to be involved in that process. So that would be my note. But good job tonight. Really appreciate it.
I'll put that into the communications plan.
Dawson, thank you so very much. Did you have something else or are you good?
I am good.
Terrific. Mr. Walton.
Thanks, John. So yeah, I noticed this is on action. So what is it exactly? I'm trying to understand from the memo that you're looking for in terms of feedback or approval tonight.
We're looking for approval on the 7 priority projects.
Approval to get bids?
Intercom. Priority to move ahead in planning and getting bids, and we'll bring bids back to the board, and then we're also going to possibly bring the stadium project back to the board for approval, just knowing how the community may have more input on that project as well before we go out to bid, because that's more of a sensitive project. So we could bring that back to you for approval.
Mm-hmm.
Design approval.
So,
it'd be more like a design approval.
So what were you saying you were planning on bringing back at the special meeting on the Saturday?
That's going to be our Measure D plan, which will have all of our projects on it that outline not just our year 1 priority projects, but also our year 1 Series A, our year 2 Series A, and then so forth down the rest of the series. Mm-hmm. And with budgets, and then with explanations on different types of projects. So, and then it's not just going to be our projects, it's also going to be a communications plan and an administrative plan as well as part of that.
Mm-hmm. So, based on the survey you did, thank you for reaching out to the teachers and the community on that. I think it was interesting to see their view on it. I don't see a great correlation between what they said and what's presented here as priorities. I can appreciate the need from a safety standpoint for the intercom and bell system. I can, appreciate that we have dry rot and termite damage. To me, those are critical needs. Stadium, field replacement, and track resurfacing, those were some of the lowest rated things by both the staff and the public. And I appreciate that it's getting old and, we want to get on it eventually. I didn't see it ranked high by anyone, so I wouldn't be supportive of 3 or 4 To me, number 5 is just related to number 1. So those would just be any intercom or bell system we have that isn't working should work. If the mower is that critical, I could be paid for out of bonds or reserves as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, I think we've heard in all the meetings loud and clear from the teachers and the staff that they feel the HVAC would make them feel much more comfortable. You know, I think you're probably on the right track. The replacement of it probably isn't the most cost-effective way, but as you pointed out in your presentation, there's modifications you could make either with adding things to it or UV or something to make that safer. So I'd be supportive of most of the priorities on here, except for 3 and 4. And I think what I'd like to see at the next meeting is some of the things that the teachers and community said were the highest priorities I don't see on this priority list at all, which was things like plumbing and gutters and electrical. I mean, having had the opportunity before COVID even, before the campuses were closed, just walking around, you know, there's a lot of gutters that I just observed that were failed. There were a lot of bathrooms at that time that looked like they were needed in repair. So, you know, from my standpoint, I'd like to see the field and track, you know, that in my mind can be put off a year. And I'd like to see the plumbing and the gutters and the electrical take a higher priority.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. Mr. Swanson.
Well, Matt, thank you for putting this all together and in a short 2 weeks too. You know, this I think is exactly what we were looking for and then some. The amount of detail that you've offered has been great. I think it helps everybody take a look at just what the issues are. You know, I now know more again about lawn mowing than I wanted to, but I'm glad that I do. I think, you know, as I look at the item, the 7 items, again, this is what we'd asked you to do because some of these things that we need to move on. I would say that, you know, as far as items 3 and 4, those I think are also, again, safety related issues. And you pointed that out. If somebody gets hurt on the track because the track is starting to fail, or suffers an injury on the field because it doesn't have the bounce that it used to have, that's going to cost us a whole lot more money in the long run if that happens. So I'm supportive of those items as well. I do have a quick question just to satisfy my own curiosity, if you don't mind, about
Sure.
the bell system at the high school and the intercom and bell system at Forest Grove. How old are those anyway? Any idea?
The Forest Grove one is an old Duquesne system, and I'd say it's at least 15 years old. The high school one is so old, I don't even know how old it is. I know that that the secretary has to program the bell schedule into it every day. So that might give you kind of an idea of how old that system is.
Yeah.
Which is fine. If it's fine, it works, and it's fine. It works. If it's fine, if it works, it's fine. But
yeah, if
anyway.
it works, great. It doesn't work. And again, I think you look at all these top 7 items, and it's not like there's other things that are not coming. Those are coming, and you're preparing those.
Yes.
But
Yes.
these particular items all look like safety related issues to me, and I think they've been prioritized correctly. So I'm ready to support them all and move ahead. Thank you again for putting it all together in a way that's pretty easy for people to digest. I know that was no easy task.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Matt, I took many notes and lots of questions on there. To me, this bond comes up because there are things that are just basically routine, even though they're routine on 10 to 12-year cycles. The stadium, if we worked on that this year and we update the field this year or next year, it's fine, but it has to be done, because eventually what you're really doing is not saying I have to fix a stadium. You're saying I don't want football and lacrosse and cheer if you don't have it. And whether or not that's a turf field or a grass field, it doesn't matter. You either do it or you don't do it.
Right.
So we can talk about, we could get a quote and not even pull the trigger on that. That's the interesting thing. We may actually have a year and move forward. Roofs, you don't have any choice. You either have them or you decide that you're not going to use the building. This is one of the reasons why the PAC is on a list somewhere, because either we start to use it and we make it so that it's usable, and fixing the lighting, in the audience part was very nice. Or we say, well, this building, we'll shutter and move on, because can't be used for its intended purpose. So eventually you have to make those calls. Intercoms, very specific. Are these now wireless, or are they still wired?
We've looked at two. One's Wi-Fi and one's radio. So they're wireless.
Okay. Part of me says, is an intercom even necessary in these days, or do you need full, loudspeakers in appropriate spots and everything else is done via regular phones and move on? However, that's a separate question, not for today. The dry rot questions, yeah, that's safety, and I think we're all in agreement on that. Sorry, I have something down here. The question that Trustee Swanson put up was, when did these bells stop working? Is a very interesting question, right? If these are 2 years in repair, now really it's 1 year, and we're kind of halfway through a year where they haven't been used, but I think everybody has said we just need to do it. So thank you for putting that out there. And paint, and again, I'll go back to what Carolyn noted. When we encapsulate, when you put new paint over, you are in fact taking away the problem. That is the solution for lead in paint, is to encapsulate it primarily. This is something, and I just want to make sure, ultimately the cycle here is, we're not trying to paint every building over 3 years. We're going to paint them one set this year, and one set in 4 years, and one set in 10 years, so that we get on a better cycle, a cycle that was lost sometime in the 90s, well before any of us were around.
Correct, yes.
Correct, yeah. And is there any reason that we have to use bland beige on every building, or can we, is that a question? I don't know who that question's for. Mr. Kelly, the other Mr. Kelly gets to decide on colors.
Yeah.
Our art teacher gets to decide. Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you again for the excellent presentation. Dr. Porras, if we ultimately decide to split this into 2 votes, is that going to be acceptable?
I think you can manage it however you wish. I do want to make one comment, if I may.
Yes.
Just in listening. I think, number one, I want to applaud Director Kelly. His decisions are made, experiencing everything in the field, no pun intended, every day. And I think the research that he's done, the data he's collected, the incredibly hard work he has to compile this is all based on a very high level of professionalism. And I appreciate him being in this district, and I appreciate his leadership. I think the issue on the stadium and the field, I was in the district when we cut the ribbon on the field and on the track. And I remember that day very well. And I remember us talking about the lifespan of it and the discussions at the time about the board to be cognizant of replacing it when that time comes, specifically for safety reasons. And it's not just safety of students and staff, it's also safety of the community. The board at the time and the board currently has agreed to leave the field and the stadium wide open for the community to use essentially every day of the week. So it's experiencing a greater level of wear than it would otherwise. At this stage of the game, with the wear that it currently has already exceeding the time limit, I would be very concerned leaving it open for the public and the community for fear of a liability issue if we're not able to address this in this coming year, and would ask the board to consider allowing us to close the gates in those facilities so that we can leave it in the best state possible for our students, because the focus has to be on providing the safest environment possible for the students. Again, this is going back simply that it's just worn out, and I don't want to risk much more wear and risk the student safety and its use when we have students come back on the campus. So something to consider. A lot of campuses don't open up their fields and facilities because of the wear issue. I'm glad that we are, but there's a price that comes with that as well. Just a thought.
Ralph, we're 12 to 13 years in on a 10-year field.
I know.
And if you look at that field in particular, I can't address the track, but the areas that are most worn, first of all, the areas that are most worn are on the hash marks, which tells us that football is the wearing factor, but also the yellow, right? If you walk around, the yellow is at a different level than everything else. And this is because of UV damage. We've done a great job of extending the life of that track.
I agree. No doubt. I just think delaying it much
letting
longer.
public remain on it has proven, I think, fruitful in general, and certainly to your programs, your athletic programs in general.
Absolutely.
So I don't think I agree with your assessment there, but that's okay. Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly is your wife, the kindergarten teacher. My bad.
Yes.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kelly. One question on HVAC, very specifically. This is a great question and a difficult question. I trust that your experiences over the years, rock solid in buildings and putting this together, but at the same time, we are in a different zone than we have been in the past. And the question that you've presented, which is, well, what if we put a UV system in front, and then we're not trying to worry about MERV 17s, which aren't possible for us, and extend the actual life of the HVAC as long as is rational and reasonable, which seems to be the right thing. They're not in demand in terms of the actual blowers themselves. They're in good shape, is a good one. But to help address this further and provide as best information and communication out, does it behoove us to try and get a medical opinion? And I don't want to say medical, that's not quite the right guy, but somebody who's involved in all these mediums. Does it help us out to try and say, hey, these are things that we're considering. What do you think and what's best? Instead of us trying to get it through multitudinous internet interactions of, what do you think? And am I barking up the wrong tree here?
No, I think you're on the right track. And I think any of these new technologies that we're looking at, I would definitely reach out to someone and get their expertise on them, because they are new technologies, and I'm not up to speed on a lot of them. This is my first pandemic, so I don't have experience in the pandemic realm either. So yeah, I think that the more help and information we can get, the better off we are.
Okay. Dr. Porras, would you take a note of that and remind me as we get through the rest of the meeting that came up, please? And at that, I would like our student rep, any comments, questions? Gabby, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. So
Thoughts?
I don't have anything specific that I feel like I can add to this, but I will say that I did also enjoy the thoroughness of the presentation, and obviously playing sports at the high school and just being a high school student, you really notice a lot of everyone saying like, oh, the intercom is kind of fuzzy today or something like that. So even though nothing has been like too bad, it's really nice hearing that you guys put so much time and dedication into making sure that the facilities are up to par for all the students. So I appreciate that. And yeah, everything looked good in the plan. I mean, I'm not really an expert on any of this, but look it to me.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll open to public comment. Ms. Davies.
Hello. So I was surprised that in our staff survey that ADA issues ranked, I think, at 67%. And when I saw the survey from Matt, I was really, really pleased that ADA was included in the survey. But I think as part of our education program for our community and our staff, it's important for everybody to understand that when we do have an ADA issue, that our facilities takes care of it immediately. So it's one of those issues that flies to the very top of the list and is prioritized as soon as we realize that we do have an ADA issue. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Davies, thank you so very much. Ms. Quindamill.
Yes, thank you. Mary Quindamill. I'm a PGUSD parent as well as a teacher at Forest Grove Elementary. And I appreciate the willingness to look further into making sure that our classrooms have clean air. And it's not just about COVID. That might have brought it to the forefront, but really it's more than that. It's we want to make sure that our kids are safe and healthy. It also has to do with, living near the coast. We have mold issues. That's just part of living here. And it helps with mold spores. Not only that, there's plenty of data that shows that student performance is much higher if they're in a healthy classroom. So I appreciate looking further into that. And it might just be because of being a teacher, and that's kind of our outlook in perspective, is that we want optimal growth academically, socially for our students. So I think that looking further into that as brought up is something that's really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quindamill. Mr. Thomas, or Ms. Thomas, I don't know who it is.
It's Mr. Thomas. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Kudos to Mr. Kelly for putting together a great report. I think it lays out a number of items that really need to get taken care of ASAP, not just for the health and safety of the students and teachers and staff, but for the community as well. And it's great that there have been a number of items that have outlived their useful time and need to be replaced, like the field and the track. But I would caution the board not to be penny wise and pound foolish regarding the health and safety of students, teachers, and staff in our facilities. I appreciate the information that that Director Kelly had put forth regarding the HVAC system. If it is not a tenable thing to be able to replace them and put in the filters that were originally discussed, I would hope that all speed is done to hire a consultant to be able to come in and see what is the best way for us to have the cleanest air possible for our students, and whether that be in the realm that that Director Kelly mentioned with UV lighting within the systems, or actually improving the systems themselves. I think that is really important. And I'd like to dovetail on the previous speaker. This isn't just about COVID. This is about the health and safety of the students going forward, with all of the bacteria and diseases that are out there, and mold coming into the classrooms as well. And so I really hope that you guys will do that. We do know that there are other school districts that have hired consultants to come in. And so I think that is well within the realm of possibility. And I think that if you put it out to the community, that's money well spent. And certainly if over 70% of your respondents are talking about HVAC, then I think it's something that should be moved to the head of the list. Thank you very much. And thanks again, Director Kelly, for your hard work.
Thank you, Steve. Ms. Kelly, is this Carly?
Hi. Yeah. I just want to thank Dr. Porras for highlighting the importance of having our fields being replaced. I think it is extremely important as like a student at Pacific Grove High School and an athlete. I think it's really important to prevent injury, potential injury of any students at our high school. And I know that if you surveyed students at our high school, it would be like very important for us to have our field replaced. So thank you guys so much for considering replacing it for our safety.
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Kelly. So sorry. Mr. Keller.
Yeah, thank you, President Paff. I just wanted to mention that as an administrator, I want to thank Director Kelly for everything that he does. His presentations are top notch and the best of our admin team. I trust his opinions on all of our facilities. And I do thank him for his time that he puts in and provides to us individually. In the case of athletic fields, being a former coach and just kind of, again, anecdotally seeing some of the injuries that have occurred with the current field, I would ask that we consider maybe switching from the tires to sand. I don't know if it's any better. I just have heard concerns about the use of the tire field. So just one point to consider.
Mr. Keller, before you hang up.
Yeah.
You know, we don't talk about the fields behind Robert Down or Forest Grove quite as much. And my concern with those is always divot holes from gophers. And one question as we move forward, and I think this is the night for it, is do we need a plan to include in our list a plan to re-level those in some manner? And maintenance does a good job of trying to at least isolate them. But do we need to look at those separately? And basically that is truly safety, since the only injuries I've really seen have been chuck holes. You know, how's that going for you?
Yeah, I'll say that there have been very minimal injuries since I've been at Robert Down with students, and the students love playing on the fields. I'm not aware of any major injuries that have occurred due to the fields. And that includes any injuries when we've had mass people there for the butterfly bazaar. I would trust Director Kelly and his opinion on this. I do know that we have some major water systems going underneath our fields, so the city would need to be brought in for anything that we do to them. But yeah,
You've answered the question, frankly, which I think really boils down to the level of levelness of your field has been appropriate for the use that goes on by your students, and it is safe, and that's what I was looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised, and we'll bring this back to the board. Board, any further comments? In the same order, I guess, in which we started initially, which was Ms. Swanson.
I have something quick to add. President Paff, I really love that you brought up possibly working a little outside the district for bringing an expert for the airflow in the classrooms. And this year at the California School Board Association event, I actually signed up for 2 topics, and one of them was learning more about the airflow in classrooms, because I think it's important, COVID and beyond. And so I did, there was a specific contractor who was the presenter, and they worked with some other school districts. I think it was Oakland and Berkeley, and they seemed very capable. And I'm not saying that that's the exact one that we should use, but I will forward their information to Dr. Porras, and maybe that will help start, if that is okay with the rest of the board.
Certainly, it's okay to forward information that please do.
Okay.
Ms. Dawson, anything else?
You had mentioned 2 votes. I got confused in there.
Well, we have not brought anything up to a vote. I just simply asked Ralph if 2 votes would be acceptable. So if we come to that, we'll come to that.
Okay, no other comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walton?
Just to reiterate what I said before, I think some of them I can understand the priority. I would have liked to seen the list reflect more of the priorities that the public and staff outlined as high priority items, which I don't see on the list. And having heard more comments from staff about how unsafe the field is, it sounds like we should have fixed that a couple of years ago with reserves.
Mr. Swanson?
No, I don't have anything further at this time. Thank you.
I have nothing further as well. With that, do I have a motion? And do we need to split this, or are we good with one motion here? I'm good with one motion. So.
I move that we accept Measure D, Series A, Year 1 priority projects.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll keep that as a single vote. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Pfaff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton,
No.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing I just want to clarify with Director Kelly. Every one of these items comes back for a vote on actual contracts. That's what I heard earlier, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to e-waste Pacific Grove Unified School District equipment. Jonathan?
Yes. Just wondering if you guys got a chance to look at the list, like it's explained in the board cover. The e-waste list contains some of the older G3 Chromebooks, but none that are functioning. Everything that's included on there is either non-functioning, broken, or it's too obsolete to be able to be used efficiently in the classroom, either by students or by teachers to continue current teaching standards that they're doing right now.
Board, I'll start on this and then go in the order of Dawson, Walton, Brian, and then Carolyn. I have no questions on this. It seems like we should be accessing stuff as it comes up. And if they're truly outdated and you need to move them to and provide them to somebody who can recycle them, we should do that. So, Ms. Dawson.
I agree, very clear cut. Thank you. No questions.
Mr. Walton.
No questions.
Mr. Swanson.
Nothing other than thank you for putting together the report, and I'm glad we're taking care of it. If our district is anything like our house, it's awash in old electronics that need to be taken care
of. Ms. Swanson.
No comments. Thank you.
Gabby.
No comment.
Thank you. Any member of the public wishing to talk about this? Seeing no hands, we will go for a vote.
I will move to approve the e-waste Pacific Grove Unified School District equipment. What are we calling that? I just guessed.
Chromebook surplus.
There you go.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, motion was made by. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought that Trustee Dawson called this the older Chromebook fleet surplus, and I think we're talking about the e-waste Pacific Grove Unified School District equipment.
You are correct.
Right. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. Thank you.
So I second the motion to go ahead and e-waste our e-wasted equipment. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Pfaff. Trustee Brian Swanson.
Aye.
Trustee Dawson.
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Aye.
Trustee Walton.
Aye.
Student advisory.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. Jonathan, thank you so very much. We move on to action discussion D, which is older Chromebook fleet surplus HP 11 G3s. This again is Jonathan.
Yes, so this one's a little bit different in that this technology, these older Chromebooks, are still functional for general purposes such as web surfing, getting online, being on YouTube. So the technology is still functional, but this is that older Chromebook fleet that we've replaced. We are in the middle of making the final arrangements and distributing the new Chromebook fleets to the students for student use from grades 2nd to 12th. So what we're hoping to do with the older fleet as it returns is to one, remove them from our organizational unit, from our Google domain, and make them available for the community, first and foremost in different tiers, first and foremost to students for their general use at home, no longer with the constraints of or protocols that we have under our domain. That would be theirs to use as they see fit. And then we would like to make them, whatever isn't claimed by students or parents, we'd like to make them available. I've already been in contact with Pacific Grove Public Library so that they can then use some to distribute through the local community here as well. Doing the same, if they don't take all of them, we want to make the same arrangements through the Monterey Public Library. And then if whatever's remaining from there, we want to make available to MCOE. They've expressed an interest in wanting to also make these available for general use to some of the districts and some of the families and students in their communities as well. And then anything that isn't claimed, then finally being recycled through Tycoons Materials Inc., which is a recycling company that MCOE recommended as they use them as well. I think the total number of Chromebooks that we're expecting to get back puts us roughly around 1,200 Chromebooks that we're expecting to get back of these G3 models.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, so I have two questions before we open up elsewhere. The first is, Song, are these fully depreciated and off our books, essentially cost-wise?
It's muted. Yes.
The answer is just a straight yes. We're carrying no costs associated with that, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Technologies is normally just 4 years, fully depreciated.
4 years. Okay, thank you. Right. And do we have a problem in any manner of a gift of public funds then if we give these away?
If that's why the board is taking for the board to take action. Once the board takes action to approve it as an access items, it's not.
Okay. I have nothing else. Mr. Walton, and then we'll go Brian, Carolyn, and Christine. John?
Yeah, thanks, John. Thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation. Yeah, I think this is a good idea. You know, usually we just surplus out computers as e-waste, and sometimes we actually have to pay for it to be taken away. I think given the fact that, you know, so much of our community is stressed with having the equipment they need to just, you know, connect to the internet, and it's so fundamental to their lives. I know the students need it for education, but I'm sure families and elderly need them as well. So given the fact that this equipment was paid for with public funds and we no longer have a need for it, I think it's a great idea to either offer it up to the public, or as Jonathan said, to the libraries. There's plenty of examples of other counties that have, you know, Chromebooks and hotspots that they check out to the public just with their library cards so that they can connect. So I like it. I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad we're taking action on it so that it's, you know, people are aware of this.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. Mr. Swanson.
Just a quick thank you for finding homes for these, and I'm glad they're just not going to be landfilled or bricked somewhere. Thank you.
Ms. Dawson.
Yeah, I very much appreciated going to Monterey County Office of Ed. That's the acronym for MCOE, because we can help out other students as well as with the library and the community. Good work.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson.
I support the hierarchy of disposal, and I like that it was spelled out that way. I really feel like no working computer should be given to Tycoon. So I'm not. That's my feeling. Like, you know, if we're at the point where we maybe have done everything we can, because I also realize 1,200 is quite a few items to place. But if we're at the point where we still have some that are working computers, I don't want us to just e-waste them. So that's my comment.
Thank you so very much. Gabby,
I don't have a comment on this, but thank you.
thank you. We'll open up to public comment. Seeing none, we will bring it back to the board. Do I have a motion to surplus the older Chromebook HP 11 G3s?
So moved.
A second.
Motion was made by Christy Dawson, seconded by Carolyn Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you all so very much. We'll move that forward. Thank you, Jonathan. Revised job description for classified position administrative assistant 4. Ms. Mankey.
And I think she needs to be unmuted. All right.
You got it, right? Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, just got it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Billy Mankey, Human Resource Director for the district. This evening, I'm presenting a revision to the job description for Administrative Assistant 4. And these revisions would create support for the facilities department. We call it MOT&G, so maintenance, grounds, operations, maintenance, operations, transportations, and grounds. And so in addition to that, it would, the person in this position would assist with maintaining the funding for the Measure D bond. So tracking and any clerical work that, and data entry work that would have to do with that. And the position we're presenting tonight is would be advertised. It's a classified position. It would be 6 hours a day and 11.5 month work calendar. The annual estimated amount for this position is $48,757, funded in 2 different ways, partially by the Measure D bond funding and partially by a position that we have not filled, and that was in the transportation department, was our transportation foreman position that did much of the clerical work for that department as well. So our recommendation to the board would be to approve the proposed changes and or provide further direction.
Thank you. So let me just revisit what I heard there. We have a position that has been left open in maintenance that is that some of this funding is available from, and that while you're putting this out there, you're floating it under a new description, which covers both the maintenance and some additional administrative tasks in the DO. Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct, President Paff.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dawson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Swanson, anything?
Just a quick clarifying question. How many years is this position set for?
There's not an end to the position at this time. And I do understand why, you're thinking because of probably the bond funding, correct? But the bond
Yeah.
is going to last.
Yeah, but I'm not, but not necessarily that it has to end, but I was just curious, is this a position that's just for the bond, or is it a permanent position?
It's a permanent ongoing position.
And then my other question is, this person will be working with Director Kelly. So I was assuming, but I don't want to assume, has Director Kelly worked with you in this job description to kind of make sure that it fulfills what he believes he'll need in the position?
Great question. Yes, I've worked with Director Kelly, with Assistant Superintendent Song Chin Bendib, as well as our union representative for CSEA.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Swanson,
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Walden?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. I have no questions other than can you tie in a bus driver with it as well, but it's probably not possible.
We actually mentioned that, but yeah.
Did you really? Okay. Student rep,
I don't have anything right now. Thank you.
public comment? Okay, we'll bring that back to the board. Board, I'd like to remind you that the fact that we are creating a job description does not actually ensure that we're actually hiring immediately for it. So it is a description at this point, not an actual position. Is that correct, Ms. Mankey?
It is the job description. We would like to start recruiting as mentioned on the cover sheet.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion, we accept the job title for the administrative assistant 4 as presented.
Seconded.
I second.
Motion was made by John Paff, seconded by Christy Dawson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Walton,
Aye.
student advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
And thank you all very much. Ms. Mankey, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Porras, are there any changes to calendar as presented last meeting?
Yes, Mr. President, we have a couple of adjustments that we would like the board to consider for action this evening. On the February 4th meeting, we have a couple items that need to be adjusted. First off, there's a repeat there that we should have caught. The second item listed is possible personnel action presented as information. And then a little bit farther down, possible personnel action, RIF. Those are actually the same thing. So we just want to strike out the second one and just defer to the fourth one, possible personnel action. And we're going to need to move that to March the 4th, which is still enough time for us to take whatever action we need to take. And then I'd also like to move the preliminary review of site master schedules. This is actually really the high school master schedule. We'd like to defer that into March as well, just with everything that we've been doing with COVID and distance learning. This is taking a bit longer than we expected. And with Mr. Garcia being new to the high school, it's just taking a little more time to do some quality control. That again is well within our timelines. We just need a little bit more time. So those are just some adjustments that we'd like to request as part of the action this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Board, any comments? I'll just open it up in general. Christy?
No comments, thank you.
Brian?
No thanks.
Carolyn?
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but I'm sure you'll tell me if it isn't. I know that we have kind of a long list of future agenda meetings going. I was hoping we could add a future meeting, either the February 11th, 18th, or 25th. I'm not sure when the break is. I needed to look it up. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Okay, John, any comments?
No comments.
Ralph, to answer Ms. Swanson's question, the break is the 18th, right? Be the week that,
The February break you're referring to, I'm sorry?
yeah.
Yeah.
15, 16, and 17.
Oh, right, it's shortened this year.
Yeah, it was shortened this year. We had to adjust the calendar. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me just see if I have this correct. You're suggesting we add a meeting, and let's just for a date, we'll put it on the 18th to do what specifically? To clear out some open items?
Yeah, we've got quite a list of future agenda items, and I know that, everything, even the basics are just taking longer this year, which is completely natural and nobody's fault. So I think adding a meeting to kind of create that cushion, I think it would be a good idea in my opinion.
Yeah.
Since we're moving, oh, sorry, John. I was just going to say, since we're moving 2 pieces off the 4th down, that's a good place to put it. We're also adding a 4-hour meeting on the 30th. So we're going to be taking care of a lot of stuff during that. But I prefer to be looking at the 4th personally.
Okay, so when we get to future agendas, we'll take a look at that. And at that point, there's, it's not that hard to go back and say, well, as an agenda item, we're going to add a calendar. Gabby.
I don't have anything right now. Thank you.
Except that you really don't want another meeting right after a break. I got that.
Well, if you schedule one, I'll show up. So whatever you got.
That is kind of you. Thank you. But the good news is you will be skiing the week before. Or I hope after your vaccination and everybody can get back to work. Woohoo! Can't even say that right now. A public comment. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Do I have a motion to accept the proposed changes?
Also move.
Seconded.
Motion was made by Brian Swanson, seconded by Christy Dawson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Pfaff,
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Walton,
Aye.
Student Advisory.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move into information discussion. Dr. Porras.
Thank you,
would
Mr.
update
President.
us on COVID?
Actually, not a lot of updates specifically for us. I did get, I'll speak a little bit to that contact tracing issue that was mentioned earlier. We do have a little activity happening at the state level and at the county level that I want to speak to. And let me get to those first, if I may. First off, right now, the California's legislature is actually in session looking to try and make budget approvals through action. And that will determine kind of where we land with the governor's plan. So there's a lot of lobbying happening right now. I sent a copy to the board. This is actually in the news, the couple of different newspapers as well. Several of the educational support and advocacy agencies, including California School Boards Association, Small Schools District Association, California County Superintendents Ed Services Association, CASBO, AXA, CTA, several others have been lobbying the governor heavily to revisit some of his funding strategies around his Safe Schools for All plan, markedly asking the legislature to consider providing a bit more funding to a plan that seems to be underfunded. And in particular, feeling that all of those groups have come to the same conclusion that many of us have, that the idea of trying to test students and staff weekly, especially for those schools in those tiers, is untenable with the amount of funding that is being provided, not to mention all of the other requirements that are part of the Safe Schools Plan for All. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying at the legislative level. I just spoke with the executive director for AXA earlier today, and he's kind of watching and waiting and seeing what's going on. So we'll have some more news about that in the next couple of days, I think. And that'll give us an idea of where the governor's heading in regards to his requirements for schools. Some of the other funding priorities that have come forward as an appeal to the legislature is to put more attention towards a focus on equity in regards to funding for California's neediest students, creating more cross-agency team interactions to get more consistency across the local health agencies in the state. For example, what is required of us in the Monterey County Health Department is really different than what we're seeing at other districts, other counties. And that inconsistency is causing a lot of difficulty for school districts to come forward in a unified front. So some districts are able to make changes in their programs more readily because their county health departments are requiring different things. That consistency would help all of the schools statewide. So they're looking for something in the bill that does that. That would certainly help us in Monterey County. Looking at how schools are opening, kind of changing the prioritization of that based on the distribution of vaccines, and taking a look at the requirements for the waiver system on elementary schools, again, with a focus on safety, and trying to create a little bit more definition around the public data tracking system that schools will be required to participate in. And that's going to come forward as well. A note on that, we were just informed today that all school districts need to begin the process of building that dashboard, and we will be as well. The first stage of that is just simply reporting to the state, how open are your schools? Is it hybrid? Is it distance learning? Is it full open? Is it small cohorts? Where are you? So that the public and the health agencies can see where schools are across the state. So we'll take care of that and make sure that that data gets out promptly. But the issues around contact tracing and cases that we were originally asked to begin looking at and recording, that requirement has not yet been brought forward to schools. Again, I think that's part of what the legislature is going to be talking about. So a lot of unknowns there. I will let the public know as soon as I hear more. I'm really just kind of waiting to see myself. There is also, notably, the California Department of Public Health is trying to redefine the word open in terms of what does open mean for schools in regards to in-person instruction. And oddly enough, there's not a whole lot of agreement in terms of what that definition means, but they've asked the legislature to make a statewide definition of what open is, and with a preference of trying to make certain levels of open mandatory. As you know, there's an Assembly Bill 10, which has not been passed, which is also being debated. Assembly Bill 10 is a push to actually make opening of schools a priority and make certain levels of it mandatory by governor order. That's not a very popular bill right now, and it's not getting a lot of traction. There's not any kind of guess that it's going to pass, but there might be elements of that that do. And so that will affect what future degrees of open are. So we'll hope to hear more about that, and that will certainly affect our schools. In the meantime, the board-approved plan in regards to opening our schools to hybrid 14 days after going into the red tier still, in my opinion, appears to be a reasonable timeline, and other school districts in our county are following a similar as to the extent that they can, unless they have waivers. So we're watching and waiting. A little bit of a word on the vaccine. We received word from the county today that the vaccine plan is still in place in terms of going to phase 1B. Schools have been asked to start providing numbers of employees so that the county can start planning for how that distribution is going to look like. It appears that the Monterey County Office of Education will be organizing that data. It's likely that our local medical providers will be opening up their doors and using their facilities for that once that time comes. And so we've provided that count to the county. And I think, I don't have the number directly in front of me, but it was somewhere around the 465 range. That includes all of our employees, including long-term subs and some of the other folks that support students. So we provided that, and I'm hoping to see that progress. If you read the Carmel Pinecone, which came out a few hours ago, Dr. Moreno from the county health department expressed a little bit of discouragement that our supply of doses are not up to where they should be based on the changes for administration for 65 and older. We'll see whether or not that tracking of dosages changes kind of the plans for the rollout for teachers. Also, I should say that those same agencies that I commented on earlier also sent a letter directly to the governor, appealing to the governor and to the legislature to move teachers up to the highest ranking possible on the next phase of vaccines so that we can try to get schools open sooner rather than later. So that was very positive, I think, support and advocacy. In regards to contact tracing, and I don't know, I'd asked Nurse Pally to join this conversation if possible. I'm going to unmute her, but if a question comes up, hopefully she'll be able to join. I want to assure everybody, we're following the direction of the county health department in regards to how we contact trace when positive cases are noted. We've been, Nurse Pally has been in touch with the health department anytime that there's a notification of a positive case. Generally speaking, when a case is noted as positive in our community, the health care provider, whether it's doctors on duty or whether it's CHOMP, they are to report positive cases directly to the county health department. They don't include us, they go just directly to the county health. County health then initiates the contact tracing protocols from their offices. They will contact us if they need our assistance to do so. And then we can use our Facilitron check-in process or whatever we need to help them. But that outside route of contact tracing takes place to the county health department. That's not we don't initiate that. However, if we do find out that from a family member or friend of a family or a staff member that that there was a positive case in their family or with a student or with an employee, it is reported to us, and immediately Nurse Pally initiates a scan of our Facilitron to find out who's been on campus so that we can do our own internal contact tracing, which we have done pretty successfully. And then also contact the county health to let them know that a case has taken place. I think we've been pretty effective in that contacting, but a lot of that part of it depends on families letting us know if it's not caught in our own health screening as it goes. I will note that public agencies, whether it's like say a private agency like a retirement home or schools like our school district, really typically do not report out cases to the general public. We keep those typically within the agencies so that we can kind of maintain confidentiality to the extent that we possibly can. If anyone who is affected by a positive case in any way is contacted by the county health department directly as part of their contact tracing, or we will if we're requested to do so. So in that regards, I think we've been following every protocol that we can to keep it as safe as we possibly can. I don't want to put Nurse Pally on the spot, but I'll invite her to make any other comments at this moment, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Porras. I'm Katrina Powley, district nurse. Good evening, everyone. So I wanted to just talk about something that Dr. Porras mentioned about the Facilitron. So the Facilitron, some of you may be familiar with it. It's our database, our tracking database. So when an employee comes on campus, they log into Facilitron and it timestamps when they come on campus, when they leave campus sites, then they check out of the system. So the system automatically records when employees arrive on campus sites and when they leave. And so we use that system to track who was on campus and when they were on campus. And then should an employee notify us of a positive case or the county, then we look at that Facilitron list to find out what other employees were on campus at the same time as the employee, and then determine if that person was defined as a close contact, meaning if they had interaction with the employee for 15 minutes or longer within a 6-foot distance over a 24-hour period. So, and then we go from there and then gather information. But as per OSHA guidelines, all information is to be kept confidential except within the circle of confidentiality, which would be if a person was identified as a close contact, I would be within the circle of confidentiality, the site administrator, and anybody that would need to know for the purposes of contact tracing. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I have a question, so I'm going to ask myself, John, can I ask a question? Yes. So if I have not heard from you, let us say I went to the DO last Friday, and this is an example, and for anyone listening, it's not real. But I went to the DO last Friday, I picked up my packet from Mandy, and somewhere along the line, someone says, oh, I found out I have a case. I check in Facilitron, and I do in fact check in on Facilitron under my own name. So if that case came to light 2 days later, you would say, well, you were not within that window, and I would receive no notification, even though I will get a message ultimately that says a case at the DO was reported such and such. But if I'm not contacted personally, then we are not in that 6-foot, 15-minute, 24-hour window. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, President Path. That's a great clarification. So if an employee is not contacted, then that you're correct. They would not have been identified as a close contact, even though all staff will get a notification of a positive diagnosis if a staff member is diagnosed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the update. Thank you very much. Board, any other questions to Ms. Pally?
Noting that Claire has her hand up.
Yeah, Claire.
Oh, there you are.
When we get
All right, I just unmuted you. I'll try again. Oh, we're bouncing. Hang on a second. Let me go ahead and take care of her. There you go.
Not yet.
That's coming.
Here you go. I also wanted to address student contacts. So when students are brought on campus for special education assessment, the assessors also enter that student into the Facilitron system. For the students that are coming onto campus for in-person instruction, we use their attendance roster. So it's not only staff that we are following up with as far as contact tracing, we also have the capacity and we are following through with contact tracing for students.
Thank you, Ms. Davies. I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you.
Board, any other questions? Hearing none. Dr. Porras, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just a couple quick notes, and while I have Nurse Pally here and her camera's on and everyone can see her, I just again want to acknowledge the work that she's doing. I even heard from the county office how much everyone holds her in the highest regard for the work that she's doing. We are so lucky to have her here, and I just want to acknowledge her hard work. And it's a lot of work to continue doing, and a lot we have under our belts to do, but just want to acknowledge her work and appreciate her. So thank you, Katrina. Finally, the only other piece that I would add to that, we are still in the deep purple zone for tier, the purposes of tier within our county. The cases were, we saw a slight reduction in the cases in the county, but currently our case rate is still sitting at about 80.3 as of 2 days ago. So I don't think we're seeing any relief anytime immediately soon, but we keep looking at those pretty regularly. And if there's any changes from the legislation in regards to opening, one thing we do know is that the purple zone, the purple tier, is still a no open tier, except for currently what was the waivers and small group cohorts. And if that changes, I will let people know. And that's about where we are.
Dr. Porras, did I hear you correctly that AB 10 is being debated with not very positive response at this moment?
As of early this morning, not getting very positive response. There's too much in there that's being rightfully so resisted in as far as mandates go. Not a lot of support in general. Okay.
And did I also understand from you in prior conversation that if a vaccine is made available to school employees, that is not to put myself at the head of the line, but that is every school employee from the board president to an on-staff aide working 2 hours a day?
Correct. The trustees are included in that because you make contact with our groups. So it does include that, includes long-term subs, it includes learning assistants that are active. So everyone that we rely on to make sure the educational program moves forward.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. Thank you for letting me know.
For sure.
Board, any other questions to Dr. Porras? Brian?
Not a question, but just a reminder to everybody out there, whether the parents or students or staff, that You know, and I've seen some letters and heard some comments lately. It goes without saying, this is especially difficult for everybody. And I think we're really seeing more and more the emotional toll that it's taking. We do have counselors available. And even some of the simple things, it's just, if you can, and there are ways to do it safely, get out of the house if you can. If you're just sitting there all day long, get out of the house for a bit, please. It will do you good. You know, just as I'll tell you what I do nearly every day now. My wife and I are studying language, and for a half an hour to an hour, we're out on the track walking in circles at 8 o'clock in the morning. And she walks faster than I do, so we don't walk together. We just walk past each other in different directions and low five each other. She's also studying French and I'm studying German, so there's not a whole lot to talk about while we're doing it. But get out of the house, please. It will do you good.
So we learned from that you're going on separate vacations. We got it. So Ms. Swanson, any comments back to Dr. Porras on this?
Just overall, you know, it's becoming more and more clear that we are in distance learning for the foreseeable future. And so I am really looking forward to discussing in a really thorough way how we can improve distance learning for our families. I think there's a lot that we can do, and I'd love for that meeting. I think it's going to happen on February 4th to really be publicized for the public to come and speak and just speak on how we can improve for them, how we can reduce stress that is coming at them from distance learning.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Ms. Dawson.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Walton.
Nothing from me.
Gabby.
Nothing from me either.
I open for public comment, please. Ms. Brousseau.
Hi there, Kylene Brousseau. I'm a teacher at Forest Grove. I just wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this has been, like if you guys have discussed this privately as a board, but I know, you know, since we're not slated to open until 2 weeks after we enter the red tier, I'm just wondering, you know, if we get past that mid-March point and we're still in the purple tier, is there going to come a point where the board is just going to decide that we will remain in distance learning for the remainder of the year? And the reason that I ask that is just, I look at if it's something where it's like the beginning of May and we go back and we have to re-roster children, that we've spent a lot of time putting these relationships in with not only the students, but the families as well over, you know, the internet and over Zoom. And typically it takes 2 to 3 weeks to establish routines and then to establish these relationships with students as well as parents when we're on a limited time before the end of the year. So I just wanted to bring that up. I tend to be very proactive, and I know that things are changing on a daily basis and, you know, moving at different speeds, but I just think that's something to really, that needs to be considered.
Ms. Brousseau, thank you so very much for that comment. And I would just address briefly saying, I think that we have not tried to broach that as a board, although I am assured that every board member has in some manner thought about what happens and how do we get there if we get an okay on May 1. So thank you for putting it in the public. I see no other public comment at this time. That was information discussion. We are at 9:44. That gives you about 10 minutes to get through the governor's budget proposal. Is that going to be sufficient for you, Ms. Song?
I have 11 slides. Let me see. Maybe my first practice to see how fast I can go through this. Let's see here. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The governor proposes budget on the 8th. This is, you know, the day after he was talking about the, you know, the old school, you know, the safe school plan that Dr. Porras talked about. So this is the part that is actually about 21-22 budget. Now, as you have heard, probably read in the paper and heard in the media that the state is actually projecting or actually received some for this year, 2021, more than $70 billion. They had to go back to last year as well because how the funding, the cash came in for last year and then this year to see where we are and the projecting for next year. A total of 70 billion. So how did this happen? Real quickly, it's just that, overall the spring, pandemic, it just, the downturn was not as severe. Of course, certain sectors of the population, the wages was actually higher for the high income earners, and the stock market, as we all know, has surpassed the 30,000 mark. So this is where we are. However, I think a cautionary note by the state saying that they are projecting 76 opposite direction, a deficit, a structural deficit, 22, 23. And I think this is a note for all of us to take pause because I have heard, I talked to a few local financial people and they said they have seen that as well. We do see a growth in our home housing, but then the people who sold homes in other areas, they have seen delinquency delay payments because pandemic, they're allowed to delay the mortgage payments. So that will come about. Unemployment claims is already higher, higher than before. So anyway, I think that's a point, is something for us to consider when we think about, this is a huge surplus, what's going to be in the subsequent years. Governors, of course, obviously is going to be addressing its immediate long-term impacts. And the 5 major themes or the highlights, one of them is a safe school, number 1, that Dr. Porras went to really thoroughly the last board meeting. And next slide, I won't go so much into that. It's a grant, it's incentive grant. So it's only when you get the money when you are into the plan to have in-person for TK through 2nd grade and then and up to 6th grade level, if the 6th grade is part of the elementary schools. The second part is early action, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because just that came about, we have more detail today and what it means for in schools in general and especially for us. And then deferrals. The state, even though with a surplus, the governor is not wiping off the deferrals for this year. So LCF, a school district, is still hurting. They're not getting the cash. He's using surplus, proposing to use the surplus to address the 21-22 school year. So this school year is still a lot of school district will not get the cash until in July. What good news is about COLA, the governor is paying for combining the COLA that he owed this year, 2021 into next year. It will not impact us directly so much, but it will help a little bit in the grants that we get and also with special ed. So there's some COLA there. And the last one is about one-time supplemental payments. Those are just non-Prop 98 money spread out to others, all the K-14 schools. And you're going to see a little bit about that. This funding, we talked about at length, this is a safe school for all planned. It's going to target the disproportionately impacted groups, low-income families, English learners and youth. Now, this is the part that we talked about last board meeting in terms of dollars. The government is proposing $450 per ADA and for us, and this is for all the ADAs in our school district, not just those will be going to in-person. If the LE is going providing in-person for those students, the lower grade students, the funding is for everybody. For us, it's about 860,000. So again, this is just scenario. And for us to give you a really general idea of what it means, whether this would be enough for us to pay for just on testing alone, let alone other costs. So this is about 860,000. So I won't go into in detail. This Dr. Perez is going to that. You have to have all this by February 1st, and instruction be ready by February 16. The next batch will be March 15. So costs, potential costs. And again, these are all just generals. Things will change, can change if we really want to participate into this program at all. So the first one assumption is that, let's say 325 employees, let's say all our students, employees with no subs, there are no subs included in here in this number. It's just full-time and part-time employees. As we know, we do have subs because they do get in contact with students. And based on CBET's numbers, 1,922, 1,922 students. So total of that is 2247. The cost before this presentation tonight, we were talking as a group in the LEAs within the county, is about $50, including shipping. So we assume that for 12 weeks, let's say we start on March 1st through May 31st, is $1.3 million. The second scenario is only about TK through 5th. Let's say we're going to participate in the governance plan. It's about 855 students and then about 80 employees. Again, no subs, 935 at $50 for 12 weeks. It's about $561,000. This is, we say, assumed cost. Now the actual cost, and I put a highlight here, is one of the school districts, Carmel Unified, just paid a week or so ago, and the cost is $129. It's more than double. So you put that into the same number of students, assuming same number of students and employees, that cost went up to $3.4 million. And the second scenario is just TK through 5 instead of all the grade levels in our schools. So the same numbers at 129, that cost now is 1.4 as opposed to 561,000. So this is the conversation that we've been saying, that the money the government is offering, like in our case, is really not enough just for the test, let alone for subs, paying for sub or additional help, classroom help, and so on and so on. The next piece of information from the state is not just from the state, but it's also it's from the federal government. And I put it in here just to share with the group. What the good news is that we're expecting a second round of stimulus money is a lot more than the first round. It's $54 billion to K-12 schools, and California will see about 6.8. Before the last round was 13.2 compared to 54. Now they expanded the federal government expanded the use, and it's about assessment, not just PPEs or coordination efforts and so on. So it's good news. At this point, in terms of the real number, I'm a little bit skeptical because the first round, we still have not received all the cash yet. And the second round for now is estimating pretty high. So I think we'll report the exact receipt when we receive that. So this is just, a ballpark number, how many billions will be divvy up among all the schools in the state of California. Per pupil for us is pretty high. Again, I'll share that information when we receive the money. The second round, this is the part that we just got news today. It's called early action. It's expanded instruction. If we want to expand instructional time, minutes, and also to address about re-engagement strategies, which we have done for our middle school and will plan to be doing for the elementary schools. Just not for English learners, foster youth, but also, those pupils who are not or who have not been performing as well, and also to close learning gaps as well. And we have until we have to fill in the application to access the grants, and information will be reported via LCAP in June. The dollar amount at this point estimated by school services for us is close to $1.3 million, 1293595. This is as of today. Is $1,000 per youth and also a percentage for extended learning funds. For our share, among almost 1,000 school districts, it's about 0.03%, it's 0.0296. So this is good news if this is really true. But this is a proposal and we'll see how it comes. And deferrals, we talked about that given the time, and I'll just say, again, this is not addressing the deferrals for LCF or school district, will not impact us. We have minimum state aid, we're getting our cash. The COLA will indirectly benefit us because we get it from special ed, and for other grants. CalSURE and CalPERS, the governor is not proposing anything new because he already has done that in his budget act. And we have already incorporated all these lower rates into our budget, into our multi-year projections. Let's see, going to the last part of the governor's proposal is about all the various grants. And I just listed real quick here, wellness, mental health, somewhat that we could potentially benefit. Like for example, the second piece, investment for educator workforce, is the educator effective grant, which the district has benefited in past years. But even times constraint, I will not go into detail. But it's something that could be indirectly will get some. And with that, I think that's it.
Ms. Chinbendib, thank you so very much. Board, at this time, it is 9:56. I would propose that we go to no later than 10:20 with the hope that we are done by 10:10. Do I have a second on that motion?
Seconded.
Okay. Well, Mandy, do we need a roll call vote?
I
for
don't
even
know,
this?
Ralph, do we?
Yes, because there's
Okay.
taken action.
Sorry,
Roll call vote.
Trustee Path,
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Where's
Trustee-
Brian?
I was muted. Aye.
oh, sorry, thank you. Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Walton,
Aye.
thank you.
Great, thank you all. We'll hopefully close out here. I think the next part is fast. There's quite a bit in this. You sent much of this presentation, but it does appear you've updated it very recently, as in this afternoon, perhaps. Could you resend this if you have not? Possibly I just didn't open an email.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. Interesting to me in there is that there's no change in STRS PERS. Is that what I read on this very last view graph?
That's correct. Yeah, unfortunately.
But it's going to come to us in 2020 something to 2024, 25, 26, right? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the Safe Schools Act that you discussed in the very early slides, that is AB 10, which we think is only questionable as to whether or not it actually gets passed. Is that correct?
Right. There's,
No,
you know,
it's separate.
given,
It actually is separate.
They're separate. Yeah.
yeah,
They
they're
are
separate.
separate.
But even with this is, you know, it's only 2 weeks old, the governor's proposal. You know, obviously every school district is really trying to find out how certain this money to bill in, even though it's not enough. But this is just what we heard is that very vulnerable to changes right now.
Yes.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson, questions?
The only thing that came to mind that's slightly off topic, but it's related to the Safe Schools for All plan is that I was chatting today with a parent who was asking me, you know, what's going on with that and are we going to open? And so I just kind of briefly went over the similar points that Song just went over about, you know, that we need to be at 25 out of 100,000 rates and the testing requirements are untenable, price, you know, just like we would go into massive debt trying to keep up with them. Logistically, we don't even know if they're possible. And that, and also that reopening, it would look, what reopening would look like would be a hybrid model. It wouldn't be full reopening going back to normal. And it may include re-rostering. And so that conversation just made me realize that I don't think that our district has, I don't think we've sent out a communication specifically kind of laying that out for families and giving them an update on where we are with that plan. So that's my comment, that if we haven't, perhaps we could do that.
It's a good comment. Trustee Dawson.
Oh, I just feel like it's so many numbers and so many different options and so fluid. I don't have anything to say right now. I think whatever I mention won't be there or will change, or whatever. So thank you for the information, and you were very succinct.
Trustee Brian Swanson.
It's good to have at least a rough idea of what might happen. So thank you for putting that all together. Your presentations are always great, and we'll see what actually comes out in the wash and be ready to deal with it at that point in time.
John?
Nothing for me.
Nothing further for me either. Gabby, any questions, concerns?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, we open up for public comment.
They've gone to bed.
I see
Seeing
nobody.
no hands raised. That was information discussion. I think one thing that does come out, Ralph, are you willing to take as an action to put together some, opening communication?
In terms of the newsletter, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Something that expresses this without having to go through a PowerPoint that way. That brings us to future agenda items. So board, I have a proposal. The very first item on there, we've actually already taken care of.
Yeah.
John Walton, you are on a teacher housing committee with the city, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you willing to put an update on that for our next board meeting?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Even, I'm not looking for, Moby Dick. We're just looking for what's going on and what else do we need? And frankly, what else does the board need to do? District solar panels. I think we have that down as spring 2021. And I think, Matt, as you continue to put together your list, somewhere on there should be just a placement on that. And Dr. Porras, if you think there's a good place for that in spring, would you please let us know next meeting? So I think what we can handle on the 4th for sure is a question on whether or not we want to stream and what does that mean? There's at least 2 or 3 options for streaming after COVID. And I think that this is probably a little early to address this, but it's a reasonable time to start the planning on it for sure. Board, are you okay with putting that on the 4th?
That would be perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you talking the streaming item?
Yeah.
Yeah, streaming. We've demonstrated we can do it. Now the question is, what does it mean after COVID? So, the February 4th date for the survey is already there. So, with that, I have no future agenda items. Ms. Swanson, did you pick anything up?
Were we gonna put an HVAC expert type of item on?
Yes. Good catch, because I already brought it up once. Ralph, as we consider new items, can we schedule that in sooner rather than later? And you and I and Brian maybe can discuss what that might mean and bring it back to the board, just at least as that as a note.
I'll need to confer with Director Kelly to find out timing on that. So if you meet with him.
Understood. But also, as we say, these are new technologies, the new ideas, and some of them are going to be great, and some of them we're going to say, wow, that's magnets in my fuel line. It does nothing. Okay. Carolyn, Brian Swanson, anything?
Yes. No.
Did you have a future? No. Okay. John Walton, any future agenda item?
Nothing for me.
Christy?
I would like at some point budget class size to be looking at class size. I think the hiring, what I brought up earlier about the amount of teachers we're hiring, I just like to be looking at that because I would rather have fewer teachers and pay them more than continuing to hire.
I think that's an excellent question. And I think one thing I would like to suggest actually, and Director Menke and Dr. Porras, we see those numbers and those changes. And could we get just some output from you on what those really mean? Some of them are special ed where we've replaced where we were already outsourcing. So it'd be good to know if we've really added to our actual expense or if we've kept relatively status quo. Is that a possibility?
I'll probably need to talk with you a little bit more specifically on what you're looking for in terms, because that's kind of a broad topic. So I'll need a little more detail.
Okay, well, I'll tell you very specifically, we're looking at the difference in numbers between 2018-19 and 19-20 on the SARC.
Right.
So, okay.
It showed 6 in one school, 5 in another. Yeah, it's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, what does that really mean? Okay, Ralph, did you pick up anything else?
No, sir.
Okay.
President Paff?
Thank you. Is that Ms. Swanson?
Yes, I just want to say 2 more things, if you don't mind. The topic, the future agenda item, board requested academic review of grades. I know it says early February, but I just want to clarify that we're meaning for that to be on the 4th as well.
We're going to try to include that in part of our presentation, and if there's more needed, we will be able to come back and provide more.
Okay, and then as far as the distance learning topic that is slated for February 4th, I'm going to make a comment. I don't know if the rest of the board agrees with me or not, but my comment is if the admin has sent out surveys to families and we're planning to send out surveys to students as well, please do that so we can have that thorough information at the meeting. That's all.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you.
Welcome.
I open up to public comment. Thank you, Carolyn. Seeing none, I have one further request, and if Mr. Garcia is still on the line, in your next open comment, this isn't an agenda item, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to at least pitch the level of participation, number of students, an overlap of students in your conditioning classes. How many children are we really seeing at this point? And I'm not looking for a report, just roughly. Ralph, if that's acceptable to you to put out there as a broad, question and not a agenda, that's where I prefer it.
Okay, well, I'm certain that we can get that information to you and just in an update of some form.
Absolutely, that'll be easy to gather. No problem.
Perfect, because I guess where I'm coming from, and I don't want to take any more of the board's time here, but is the more students we can get doing something active, how we draw them in. And I know that everybody's been looking at how do we open up a PE class for real. That's going to help us get through the next 5 months. So what we can do there will be beneficial. So I'd like to know. Thank you very much. Board, with that, unless there's anything else, anyone?
Other
Speak
than
up now.
Closed, right? We return to closed session.
We will return to closed session. Jonathan, if you could move us back to room 1, please.
Bye-bye.